Outside Los Angeles, a driver pulls up to find a young woman sitting on a large black box. She offers him $200,000 cash to transport her and that black box across the country to Washington, D.C. But there are rules. He cannot look inside the box. He cannot ask questions. He cannot tell anyone. They must leave immediately. He must leave all trackable devices behind. As these eccentric misfits hit the road, rumors spread on social media that the box is part of a carefully orchestrated terror attack intended to plunge the USA into civil war. The truth promises to be even stranger and may change how you see the world. Well. Hello, travelers. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? But a bunch of you were asking for it, and I've been meaning to do it. And I can't just be self-conscious and paranoid and just not start it forever. So here we are. The latest read-through I'll be doing on my channel. Once again, it seems that they're all going to be Jason Pargin, aren't they? But formerly known by his pseudonym as David Wong. I do love Jason Pargin's work. If you're interested in hearing my older read-throughs, for better or for worse, they're all on my channel. There's the John Dies at the End series with the first book of that very name, followed by This Book is Full of Spiders, Seriously Dude, Don't Open It, What the Hell Did I Just Read, and If This Book Exists, You're in the Wrong Universe. His other book series that I've also done full read-throughs for on my channel is Futuristic Violence and Fancy Suits, followed by Zoey Punches the Future in the Dick, and the latest one that was the last book that I read on here, Zoey is Too Drunk for This Dystopia. He now has this new title, which is just kind of a standalone story, so it kind of makes me interested in it. I won't have a well of the usual voices to draw on from, but I will try my best. I'm going to be trying to give characters voices. I'm just going to be reading this to make it as fun, interesting, and engaging for me as it is for you guys and gals at home. This is by no means a professional read-through. I'm not some Audible curated third-party contractor. I'm going to be doing my best with what I've got, for better or for worse. And of course, this is not a market substitute for the book. This is my read-through of it that I'm doing for fun and for also just like performance art. But I sincerely hope you'll support the writer, Jason Pargin. Not enough people buy books out there. If you want to buy this, it's available at, I believe, all main publishers and wherever you can usually get books like this. I'm pretty sure there's already most likely an audiobook available, and if you're a very big fan of all this type of stuff like I am, you can either check out more of Jason Pargin's work on crack.com, or you can even check out the movie adaptation of John Dies at the End, which was a pretty alright movie, all things considered. But without further ado, I'm starting to worry about this black box of doom by Jason Pargin. Day 1. But I am very poorly today, and very stupid, and hate everybody and everything. Charles Darwin, in A Letter to a Friend, 1861. Chapter 1. Abbott. Abbott Coburn had spent much of his 26 years dreading the wrong things, in the wrong amounts, for the wrong reasons. So it was appropriate that in his final hours before achieving international infamy, he was dreading a routine trip he'd accepted as a driver for the rideshare service Lyft. The passenger had ordered an early morning ride from Victorville, California, to Los Angeles International Airport, a facility Abbott believed had been designed to make every traveler feel like they were doing it wrong. He rolled up to the pickup spot, the parking lot of a Circle K convenience store, to find a woman sitting on a black box, one large enough that she probably could have mailed herself to her destination with the addition of some breathing holes and a piss drain. It had wheels, and she was rolling herself back and forth a few inches in each direction with her feet, working out nervous energy. The millions of strangers who would become obsessed with that box in the coming days would usually describe it incorrectly, calling it everything from a footlocker to an armored munitions crate. What the woman was actually sitting on was a road case, the type musicians use to transport concert gear. This one was covered in band stickers, a detail that would have been inconsequential in a rational society, but would turn out to be extremely consequential in ours. Abbott rolled down the window and braced himself, doing his usual scan for reassuring signs that the passenger is normal. He developed a sixth sense for the weirdos who, for example, wanted to sit in the front. The woman on the box wore green cargo pants and a dazzling orange hoodie that looked to Abbott like high-visibility work gear. Though if she were on the job, the bosses weren't strict about the dress code. She wore a faded trucker cap that said, "Welcome to the shit show." Below that was a pair of oversized sunglasses with lime green plastic frames, and below that, smeared lipstick that looked like it had been hurriedly applied in the dark. Her hair was short enough that it appeared to have been buzzed without a mirror while driving down a bumpy road. It did not occur to Abbott that all of this would be an excellent way to thwart security cameras and facial recognition software. Abbott, his nervous system already hovering a finger over its big red fight-or-flight button, asked, "You got the lift to LAX?" He was hopeful she'd say no, but there was no one else in the vicinity aside from a rail-thin man by the tire air machine having a tense argument via either Bluetooth or psychosis. "Oh my God," said the woman on the box. "I have a huge favor to ask you. Huge. I am in so much trouble with my employer." She removed her green sunglasses as if the situation had become much too serious for such eyewear. Her eyes were bloodshot, and Abbott thought she'd either been recently smoking weed or recently crying, though he knew from personal experience that it was possible to do both simultaneously. He was now absolutely certain that the favor she was about to ask was going to be illegal, impossible, or just a string of nonsense words. He wasn't sure how to respond without accidentally agreeing, so he just stared. "Okay," she said, after realizing it was still her turn to talk. "Yes, I ordered a trip to LAX, but in the time I've been waiting, I found out that's not going to work. This is a big problem. Big problem." Her voice was shaky, and Abbott decided that she had, in fact, been crying. He instantly sensed two opposing instincts in his brain quietly begin to go to war with each other. "This box I'm sitting on," she continued, "the guy who hired me has to have it by Monday, the 4th of July. I can't ship it because I can't let it out of my sight. I have to stay with it wherever it goes, and I can't fly for reasons that would take all day to explain. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. It's going to sound like a hypothetical or a joke, but it's an actual question, okay? Okay, so how much would you charge to drive me to Washington, D.C.? Abbott took a moment to make sure he'd heard her right before replying. "Oh, that's not something you can do in a lift. The maximum trip is only—" No. You clock out of your app or however you do it. I'm asking you, personally, as a citizen with a beautiful working car. What is this, an Escalade? A Lincoln Navigator. It actually belongs to... I'm asking what you would charge to take me all the way across the country. And your reflex is going to be to say no amount of money because I'm talking about totally putting your life on hold for more than a week without notice. Restaurants, hotels, lost business, canceled 4th of July plans, additional stress. Is a lot to ask. But I'm willing to pay a lot. Or rather, my employer is willing to pay a lot. Look." She twisted around and dug into a tattered duffel bag that Abbott hadn't previously noticed. When she came back around, she was holding 2 thick folds of cash, each bound with rubber bands. He physically recoiled at the sight of it, mainly because not a single reasonable person has ever carried money that way. "This is $100,000, she said, waving the cash around like a mind control amulet. "The guy who hired me has this kind of money to throw around, and no, he's not a criminal, he's a legitimate rich guy, if such a thing exists. No, I can't tell you who he is. All I can tell you is that he needs this box by the 4th at the latest, and it has to be kept quiet. Today is Thursday. We can make it easily. We don't even have to travel overnight. 4 days of leisurely driving, and we'll get there Sunday evening, no problem. $100K is my starting offer for you to make this drive. Make me a counteroffer." At this stage, Abbott was considering this request in the exact same way he'd have considered a request to be transported to Venus in exchange for a baggie of rat turds. He just wanted out of this crazy conversation as quickly and safely as possible. He said, "I'm sure there are plenty of people within a few miles of here, probably 1 million of them, who'd love to take you up on this, but I really can't. I'm sorry. She shook her head. No, you're perfect for this, I can already tell, and I can't keep asking people. I have to get on the road, and I have to do it now. The more drivers I have to ask, the more people know about this, and that's bad. Secrecy is part of what I'm paying for, and I'm not crazy. I know how I look. Though I will have to tell you about the worms at some point, but no, I'm dressed like this for a reason. How about 150? A third fold of cash was added, and Abbott had to force himself to look away from it. He prided himself on not being enslaved to mindless greed, but way back in the rear of his noisy brain was a tiny voice pointing out that this amount of money would let him move out on his own and tell his father to fuck off, though it would definitely have to be done in that order. It would be freedom, for literally the first time in his life. He imagined a factory farm pig escaping into a sunny green pasture and seeing the clear blue sky for the first time, though he was having trouble imagining the pig looking up. Could pigs do that? He'd have to Google it later. Wait, what did she say about worms? The woman grinned and sat up straighter, the posture of an angler who's just seen the bobber plop under the surface. It kind of made Abbott want to refuse just to spite her. But there are rules, she said, a finger in the air. You can't look in the box. You can't ask me what's in the box, and you can't tell anyone where we're going until it's over. After that, you can tell anyone anything you like, but no one can come looking for us. Well, there's certainly nothing weird or suspicious about that. So, why don't you just rent a car and drive yourself? No driver's license. I used to have one, but the government took it away. They said, "You're too good of a driver. It's making the other drivers look bad. You're hurting their self-esteem." I really just can't. You see I'm perfect for this, but I assure you I'm the absolute perfect person to not do it. That's what, like 50 hours of driving? I don't even like to drive for 1 hour. You drive for a living! Oh, I just started doing this a couple months ago to... I'm just teasing you. I know you probably didn't grow up dressing as a Lyft driver for Halloween. But no, you're my guy. You're not married, right? I don't see a ring. No kids, I can see it on your face. If you have another job, it's one you can walk away from. It's not a 401k and healthy insurance situation. You probably live with a parent, so even if you have pets, there's somebody to feed them while you're away. You're old enough that nobody's going to assume you were abducted. You're what, 24? Around there? 26. Did you just deduce all that on the fly? She smiled again and made a show of leaning forward, narrowing her eyes as if to examine him. Ah, see? There's something you need to know about me. I can read minds. I can tell you're skeptical, so let me give it a shot. Ready? She narrowed her eyes farther, comically exaggerating her concentration. At this point, Abbott was 99% of the way to driving off and marking the ride as canceled. You have trouble getting to sleep at night, she began, because you can't turn off your brain. Usually it's replaying something stressful that happened in the past, or rehearsing something stressful that could possibly happen in the future. You then have to down constant caffeine just to function throughout the day. I bet you got one of those big energy drinks in the center console right now. You sometimes get really good ideas in the shower. You can't navigate even by your own city without software that gives you turn-by-turn directions. You get an actual physical sense of panic if you can't find your phone, even if you know it's still somewhere in your house. She was rocking in her seat, rolling the trunk's tiny wheels back and forth, back and forth. You don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, she continued before Abbott could interrupt. You've never had a long-term relationship. And at least once in your life, you thought you were dating someone while the whole time they thought you were just friends. You actually don't have any close friends. Maybe you did when you were in school, but you didn't keep in touch. You've replaced them with a whole bunch of internet acquaintances. Maybe you're all members of the same fandom or a guild in a video game, but you'd be traumatized if any of them suddenly showed up at your front door unannounced. Sometimes, out of the blue, you'll physically cringe at something you said or did when you were a teenager. When you use porn, you may have to sort through 200 pics or videos before you find that one that will get you off. You're sure that humanity is doomed and feel like you were cursed to be born when you were. Am I close? Abbott had to take a moment to gather himself. Forcing a dismissive tone with all his might, he said, "Congratulations, you've just described everyone I know." Exactly. It describes everyone you know. I really do have to get back to work. I don't. Don't get offended, please. None of that was intended as an insult. I'm only saying that I know you're an outsider, just like me. I think the universe brought us together. But I'm not done, because this is the big one. The reason you're hesitating to make this trip, even for a life-changing amount of money, isn't because you're worried that I'm a scammer or that my employer is a drug lord and this box is full of heroin. No. What you fear above all is humiliation at the hands of the unfamiliar. What if you get a flat tire on a highway in Tennessee? Do you even know how to change it? What if we wind up in the wrong lane at a toll road and the lady in the booth yells at you? What if you get a speeding ticket in Ohio? How do you even pay it? What if you get into a fender bender and the other driver is a big, scary guy who doesn't speak English? Then there's the absolutely terrifying prospect of spending dozens of hours in an enclosed space with some weird woman. What if you embarrass yourself? Or worse, what if I say something that makes you embarrassed on my behalf? You'll have no mute or block button, just unfettered, raw dog, face-to-face contact with no escape for days on end. What if I'm so unhinged that we literally have nothing to talk about? No shared jokes, no way to break the tension. What if all these scenarios that humanity deals with a billion times a day, but that you find so terrifying that you wouldn't even risk them for $150,000 in cash? So the question is, would you do it for $200? She fished out a fourth hunk of bills. The escalating amounts actually didn't make an impression on Abbott. At this point, the dollar figures all registered as equally impossible sums of money. But the hand that held the cash was trembling, and he sensed the thrum of desperation inside the woman, the vibe of one who has exhausted every reasonable option and is now trying the stupid ones. 100 now, she said, and 100 after we arrive in D.C. If you think it's a trick, then we'll get there and I'll steal back the money at knife point. We can swing by somewhere and you can drop off the first payment. You can even take it to your bank. Let the teller do the counterfeit test on the bills. If we hurry. How do you know I wouldn't do that and then just refuse to drive you? Because I can see into your soul. You would never do that. Not just because it's wrong, but because you'd be torn apart by the awkwardness of that conversation. Of having to see the look on my face when I found out you double-crossed me. Also, you'd soon realize that you wouldn't just be screwing me, but my employer, and even if he's not a criminal, you can guess that's probably a pretty bad idea. He could send guys in suits to your house to demand the money back, and just think how awkward that would be. Abbott heard himself say, "Can I have some time to think about it?" and knew that this automated avoidance mechanism had kicked in. He'd been developing this apparatus since his first day in kindergarten, when the smelly girl had asked him to play with her, and, in a panic, he'd had to come up with a plausible excuse not to. He told her his family's religion forbade touching plastic dinosaurs. These days, it was pure reflex. If an acquaintance invited him to trivia night at the bar, a ready-made, ironclad excuse would fly from his lips before he'd even given it a thought. Sure, sometimes he'd find himself wondering if maybe he should be filtering these invitations before they were routed directly into the trash. Here, for example, on some level, he knew this offer deserved more consideration. But his request for time wasn't about that. It was just one of the stock phrases he developed to get to a safe distance where plans could be easily canceled via text, or, even better, by simply avoiding that person for the rest of his life. Sure, this woman was in some kind of distress, but that would be no burden to him once she was out of sight. "No, you can't have time to think about it," said the woman on the box. "I meant it when I said we have to leave right now. Maybe we can swing by your place to pack up some clothes and whatever medications you're on. You're on a few, right? And to tell the parent or grandparent you live with that you'll be back late next week. But it has to be real quick, in and out." "I can't even tell my dad where I'm going?" "You'll tell him that a friend needs you to help with a job that pays a bundle, that it's being done on behalf of a celebrity and has to be kept quiet so the press doesn't sniff it out, and that it's nothing illegal. That's like 90% true. Or 80%. It's mostly true." "Is your employer a celebrity?" "He's not a movie star or anything, if you're trying to guess who he is, but your dad shouldn't question it." She waved a hand in the vague direction of Los Angeles. "Out there, you've probably got 100 professional fixer types doing jobs like this as we speak." "Then go find one of them. If you think I'm such a loser, what makes you think I can even get us there?" "All right, enough of that. She stood and put on her lime green sunglasses. You don't even have your heart in it anymore. Come on, help me load the box. It's really heavy. We've been sitting out here too long and people are starting to stare. In the coming days, many words would be spent speculating as to why Abbott had agreed to the trip. Was it the money? Or did he genuinely want to help this woman he never met? The truth was, not even Abbott himself knew. Maybe it was just that by the time she was lugging the box toward the rear of the Navigator, it'd have simply been too awkward to stop her. Malort. Considering he was 275 pounds, bald, covered in tattoos, and wearing mirrored sunglasses, Malort could have wound up with many nicknames. But a drunken bet in a Milwaukee dive bar decades earlier had resulted in a bicep tattoo of a Jeppson's Malort bottle, the Chicago area liquor so infamously bitter that the label featured a lengthy paragraph apologizing for the taste. His friends had all agreed the tattoo and nickname fit him, but never dared to explain their rationale in his presence. He did have to drop the little dots above the O in recent years, as nobody knew how to add those in text messages. The man they called Malort rolled up to find that the Apple Valley Fire Department had apparently arrived just in time to turn the shack in the desert from a smoldering ruin into a wet smoldering ruin. Only 2.5 walls of the flimsy structure were still upright, exposing the charred interior like a diorama. It told a fairly simple story of a loner hiding from and/or rooting for the apocalypse. From where he sat, there was no sign of the black box, and he had a sinking feeling it was long gone. He stepped out of his metallic red Buick Grand National and approached a young woman whose build and face made him look like a kid who dressed up in his dad's helmet and turnout coat. He was hosing down the aftermath to cool the embers, and looked like he would have a stroke if 2 thoughts appeared in his brain simultaneously. He noticed Malort, and a beam of curiosity pierced his haze. "This your property?" asked the kid. It was a dumb question, thought Malort. The type of guy who sets up in a wilderness survival shack probably doesn't get around in a sparkly Buick that surely lists at least one pimp in its Carfax report. He took the dumbness of the question as a good sign. Instead of answering, Malort pulled out his phone and pointed his camera at the scene, acting like he had an important job to do. Generally, if you can project enough confidence and purpose, all the uncertain nerds of the world will just part like the Red Sea. He stepped toward the smoldering structure with his phone, and, without looking at the kid, grumbled, "Is there propane?" "Oh, there was. It already popped. That's what blew out the sides here. The ruptured tank is on the floor. There's some kind of apparatus attached. Maybe a booby trap, or maybe they were trying to deep fry a turkey. You ever see one of those go wrong? Nightmare. So, are you a friend? One of the neighbors?" Malort peered into the half-standing structure from afar, trying to stay out of the hose splatter. The other firefighters hadn't seemed to register his presence, most of them distracted by the task of spraying down the landscape to keep stray sparks from triggering a brush fire. "The strangest thing just happened," rumbled Malort. "You know the big house over the hill there, behind the fence with all the barbed wire? The crazy bastard who lives there owns all this. It's all his property. So, I was chasing an intruder through that house. Then they went round a corner and vanished into thin air. I looked all around, saw neither hide nor hair of 'em. A few minutes later, I looked over the window and I noticed the smoke over here." "Oh, really?" said the kid, who didn't seem to understand what that had to do with this. "Nobody dead in there, I take it?" "No, sir. Looks to me like they either left the propane to blow up on purpose, or left it unattended on accident." "So there's no corpse in there, but if you go over the hill and look in that house behind the barbed wire, you'll see the owner is dead on the floor of a workshop where he was making Lord knows what. Though I wouldn't advise poking your head in unless you've got a strong stomach. I'll have to identify him by his teeth and prints, considering the condition his face is in." Malort studied the smoking remains of a bed, now just a blackened frame and springs. The morning sunlight and the spray of the hose was decorating the scene with a festive little rainbow. "Is that true?" asked the kid, trying to piece together the implications. Did you call it in?" I'm not much for calling things in. Though you should tell your people to wear protective gear when they go over there. I don't know what the guy had in his shop, but there were homemade radiation warning signs on the door. You can decide for yourself whether a homemade radiation sign is scarier than an official one. Malort studied the shack's exposed ashy guts and said, Have you seen any sign of a road case? One of them black boxes with aluminum trim, about the size of a footlocker. Oh, no, sir. I mean, we haven't dug around inside there, but I haven't seen anything like that. Hey, a bomb and arson are on their way. You should tell them about the dead body. Nobody has come to take anything from the scene. Not since I've been here. I didn't catch your name. And nobody saw the occupant leave? Or what vehicle they were driving? It might have been a blue pickup. No, sir. The kid was glancing around now, presumably for someone senior to come to his rescue. Malort zoomed in with his camera, focusing on the bit of intact wall at the foot of the bed. There was a schizoid scatter of pictures and drawings pinned to the wall, blackened and curled, the residue of a mind gone to batshit. He snapped a photo. He then studied the floor around the bed. Point your hose away, growled Malort. I'm gonna check something. He stomped toward the shack, kicked over the burned-out bed frame, and yanked away a waterlogged rug underneath. There it was, a hatch that opened with a metal ring. Huh? Said the kid, as Malort yanked the hatch open. They got a basement? They've got a tunnel and a bomb shelter. Follow it back 100 yards or so, and you'll wind up under that house behind the fence. It turned out my intruder didn't vanish. They slipped into a bedroom closet, climbed down a ladder, ran over, popped out here. Then, thought Malort, they had rigged it so he'd get a full face of propane tank shrapnel if he tried to follow. The kid looked amazed. Damn, is this like a cartel operation? I have a buddy who said they busted a place that had tunnels running all through the neighborhood. Sir, shouted a new voice from behind the kid. What's your business here? It was the older guy, coming to assert his authority. Malort tensed up. The dude was in his 50s or 60s, but that only put him in the same range as himself. And you generally didn't want to tangle with a firefighter. They had muscles from hauling gear, and bad attitudes from breathing toxic chemicals and remembering the screams of burning children. He's looking for a big box, said the kid. He says the old guy who owns this land is dead over in that house behind the fence, and now he's found a secret tunnel under the Unabomber hut, and the house is radioactive. Maybe. Who are you? Asked the older man, ignoring the kid completely. Malort put his phone away. I was just leaving. No, you're not. I'm gonna need to see an ID. Hey! Malort ignored him and made his way back to the Buick. The senior fireman was talking into a radio now, hurrying to get himself between Malort and his car. You just wait right here. He put a hand on Malort's chest. Malort stopped, looked slowly down at the gloved hand, then back up to meet the old dude's eyes. There he detected the same apprehension he'd seen on the faces of authority figures since his growth spurt in middle school. He decided that, if things continued to progress in this fashion, he would open with forearm blows to the head, and then delegate the closing argument to his boots. No doubt the other firemen would try to jump in, but you can't waste your life worrying about stuff that's not going to happen until 30 seconds from now. Everybody, announced Malort, get out your phones and start recording. Because if this old fuck doesn't get out of my way, what happens next should really be something to see. He balled his fists, and his heart revved into another gear. As stimulants go, an early morning ass-kicking was only a notch below speed. The old man gave him a perfunctory hard look, and then backed down, allowing Malort to get behind the wheel of the Grand National unimpeded. The old man made a big show of photographing license plate to save face. As Malort backed up, he leaned out his window and said, Never challenge a man in a Buick. He's got nothing to lose. As he headed back to the main road, he pulled up the pic of the shack's interior and zoomed in on the charred paranoia collage. Written on a handmade banner above the darkened scraps were 3 words. The Forbidden Numbers. Chapter 2. Abbott. The short trip to Abbott's home afforded him just enough time to engage in his favorite pastime, which was carefully tabulating all of the ways in which the universe was wronging him in that particular moment. 1. His new passenger did, in fact, insist on sitting in the front, undeterred by the pile of objects he kept in that seat specifically to prevent that. She had just climbed right in and pushed aside his carefully arranged barrier of lip balm, asthma inhaler, vape pen, throat lozenges, antacids, and bag of flamin' hot Cheetos, the woman blundering into his private world like a wet dog rolling onto a chessboard in mid-match. 2. She kind of smelled bad. She stank of smoke, but not cigarette smoke. It was the acrid stink of plastic and other materials that only burned when things went badly wrong. He didn't know what exactly could go wrong with a human metabolism to make a person smell like that, and didn't want to know. 3. And this was the worst of all. She simply wasn't upset enough. As soon as they were in the vehicle and rolling, her teary panic evaporated, and out from behind that cloud beamed horrible, horrible sunlight. It's not that Abbott was opposed to others being happy, though he found the miserable were generally less exhausting to be around, but Abbott himself was definitely not happy, and in the aftermath of any transaction, this kind of mismatch in demeanor generally implied that one party had gotten screwed. "I haven't been on a road trip in forever," she cooed, gazing at the passing megachurch and Chevy dealership like she was taking in the Jungle Cruise at Disney World. "I'm so excited! Do you realize that only 70 years ago, there wouldn't have even been a highway from here to DC? You literally have been getting off on little country roads, some of them gravel, to get from one end of the USA to the other. If you go back like 3 lifetimes, it's a trip you wouldn't expect everyone to survive. Somebody in the party would be dead of tuberculosis or bear attack before you got halfway. There are so many parts of the world where they still don't have this, a wide, perfectly smooth road from basically anywhere to anywhere." "Yeah," muttered Abbott as they stopped at a red light. He immediately took the opportunity to act like he was engrossed by something on his phone. She glanced over and said, "Hey, have you ever noticed that when you're watching a movie or reading a book and a character mentions social media, it makes you cringe? Like if a character says, 'We're blowing up on Twitter,' or 'We've gone viral on TikTok.' It's just really off-putting. Corny." "Oh, really?" mumbled Abbott, wondering if this woman was going to stop talking long enough to let him think. "You know why I think that is? I think we hate being reminded that this is how we spend all our free time. We want our fictional characters to go out and do things in the real world. If they show the protagonist zoning out on the sofa with their phone, it's always portrayed as pathetic, like, 'Look at this poor sap.' That's weird, right? Considering that's probably the exact position we're in when watching them do it." Abbott cleared his throat and said, "Hey, when I get to the house, I'll have to talk to my dad. This is his car, and I'm just letting you know right now that he—" "Let me stop you right there. Remember, I can read your mind. You're already planning how you're going to use 'my dad won't let me go' as a way to get out of the trip. Maybe you'll say he won't let you have the car, even though you've clearly already gotten permission to use it for work. And this is work. I bet you find yourself doing that a lot." "Doing what?" "Instead of just saying what you'd prefer, you offload the choice to someone or something else. Instead of 'I don't want to hang out with you,' it's 'I have to work that night,' or 'I'm not feeling well.' Nothing is ever expressed as your own needs and wants, so you never have to defend your choices or own the consequences later. I used to do it all the time." "Fine. I don't want to take you on this trip." "Yes, you do. Are you honestly telling me the version of you a month or a year or 10 years from now won't be happy that you rescued a desperate person, went on an adventure, and got a couple $100,000 to jumpstart your adult life? Sure, you don't want to do the work right now, during the hard part. Nobody does. But the real you doesn't exist in the moment. You exist in the long term. That you, the whole you, will be glad you did this." "I don't want to do it because what you're asking me to do is objectively crazy and certain to end in tragedy." "I bet you do that a lot too. Catastrophize. Everything outside your comfort zone is a worst-case scenario waiting to happen. The reality is, somebody with lots of money needs a job done, and you are in the right place at the right time. Nothing crazier than that. And in a week or so, it'll be completely behind you. All you'll have is the money, some cool memories, and a few thousand more miles on your old man's car. Even that will be good for it. City driving is torture for cars. They need to get out and run. By the way, you've never asked my name, and we've reached the point where it's going to be too awkward for you to ask, and you'll have to play some roundabout game to get me to say it. Let me save you some time. It's Ether. E-T-H-E-R. Do you have a last name? Nope, just Ether. Okay, I'm starting to think this is a prank. And what's your name? It, would have shown on the app when you ordered the ride. Yeah, but for all I know, you have a cool nickname you prefer to be called, like Dutch or Poncho or Killer or Professor Big Nuts. Abbott is fine. Good to meet you, Abbott. Remember, when we get to your place, it's in and out real quick, right? She shot a nervous glance into the rearview mirror, then tried to play it off by saying, I gotta remove this lipstick. I look like the Joker. One of the versions that does a sloppy job with the makeup to let you know their movie is for grown-ups. She took off the welcome to the shit show hat and ran a hand through her raised hair, like she'd never felt it before. Abbott decided then that she had, in fact, cut her hair that very morning, maybe minutes before they'd met. That, oddly enough, was what caused him to silently add one more item to his packing list. He spent the 20-minute drive home quietly rehearsing every possible disaster that could occur in the course of this trip, which it turned out wasn't enough time to even scratch the surface of all his vividly dire scenarios. Nice house, exclaimed Ether at the sight of Abbott's dad's McMansion, the exterior of which Abbott had always thought looked like stucco that the crew had drunkenly mixed with piss. We're close to the lake, right? Do you ever go? Ride a jet ski around? All that? No. My dad goes out there and fishes. Do you ever go with him? If he ever offered that, I'd assume his plan was to drown me. I'll be right back. He took the navigator's key fob inside with him, along with the 2 bundles of cash. He figured it was possible Ether could still hotwire the vehicle and take off with it. But so what? He'd have a free $100,000, and the stolen navigator would be his dad's problem. The house was empty. Abbott had known his father wouldn't be home, as the man worked 6.5 days a week. He went to his own bedroom and packed 10 days' worth of t-shirts and cargo shorts, adhering to his habit of including far more pairs of underwear than he'd need, as if he were going to just be continually soiling himself amid a nationwide shortage of pairs for purchase. He packed his eye drops, anti-dandruff shampoo, athlete's foot spray, fingernail clippers, sleep mask, 2 types of skin ointment, hemorrhoid cream, and 3 different kinds of antacids. He went to his medicine cabinet for both of his prescriptions, and noticed that one of them, the most important, only had 2 pills rattling around in the bottle. He felt a little jolt of panic, and made a mental note to refill it before leaving town. He almost packed the white noise machine he needed for sleep, but was pretty sure there were phone apps that did the same thing. He'd have to remember to download one, lest he be left alone in the dark with his slithering thoughts. He considered grabbing a second pair of shoes and decided he was being ridiculous. He went to pack up his laptop, which was still on the little folding table positioned in front of the section of wall he'd painted bright green. Then he reconsidered and took a seat in front of the laptop and logged in. Hey, Gain, he said into the laptop's camera while stuffing items into his bag. It's Abaddon. Something came up, so, no streams this week and probably next. I have to hit the road. I'll be checking in with you when I get the chance. Thanks for all your support. I'll be back on by Monday the 11th, I think. You guys enjoy your 4th of July and your long weekend if, you got a job that even gives you days off. As I was packing, I remembered I have to get my brain pills refilled and realized how ironic it is that they're for my anxiety. But nothing gives me anxiety like the prospect of running out. Or maybe that's not ironic. Does anybody know what that word even means? Anyway, I'm in the process of packing and imagining myself going into withdrawal while flying down the interstate at 80 miles an hour. He was interrupted by 2 brief beeps of the navigator's horn outside. I guess she's getting impatient. All right, I have to go. If you don't even hear from me again, it means I've been murdered and dumped in a ditch somewhere. Bye-bye. He closed the laptop and wrapped the charging cable around it, having no idea that he just recorded what would become by far the most viewed stream of his lifetime. The question now was what exactly to tell his dad. He could send a text, but that would simply yield a return call, and, eventually, his father chasing him down to put a stop to the whole thing. No, he needed to be long gone before his dad even knew about the trip. After Abbott returned with enough money to screen himself from this prison, it wouldn't matter. Hell, he could drop the navigator off while his father was on a job site and simply never have to talk to the man again. The sheer thought of it sent a flash of warm, golden light through his system, the sensation that he believed other people called hope. He found a pen and a full-size sheet of paper that wouldn't be easily overlooked and wrote, "Got offered a cash job. Last minute. Need to help a friend move some stuff. Taking the navigator. Back within 10 days, probably. Abbott." He then pulled out one of the wads of cash and peeled off $500 bills, placing them on top of the note and weighing down both with a brushed steel salt shaker, an electric one that ground the salt for some fucking reason. He didn't even know why he was leaving the money. Maybe he just wanted to prove that the job was real. That's how it worked with his dad. Nothing was real until there was money to show for it. Abbott then went up to his father's bedroom for the last item he'd added to his packing list. He opened the bottom drawer of the nightstand and grabbed the box that contained his father's handgun. Inside, the automatic was nestled in black foam, a spare magazine resting alongside it. Abbott only hesitated for a moment before taking the gun and returning the closed box to the drawer. There was no reason for his father to even notice it was gone. If an intruder happened to break in during Abbott's trip, well, tough luck. Dad would have to go for the golf clubs in the closet. He stuffed the gun under the clothes in his duffel bag, having no way of knowing that the charred remains of the bag and its contents, including the gun, would be examined by a forensics team less than 5 days later. He gathered everything and headed downstairs. He paused at the front door to take a look around the living room, wondering if he would ever set foot in this house again. He decided that from here on out, that would be the goal that kept him going, making sure he'd never have to. "You came back, and you packed!" Ether giggled and clapped like a little girl as he approached. "I was sure you were going to ghost me. You know how I thought you'd do it? I thought you'd go inside and call a friend who needs the money. Then you just hide in there until they pulled up. Like, hey, Abbott told me you need a driver. There'd have been no reason for me not to go with them instead." Abbott stopped and realized that would, in fact, have been a perfect way to get out of this. Was it too late to try? Nah, who was he kidding? He had nobody to hand the job off to. Ether noticed what he was carrying, and her eyes narrowed. "Oh, your laptop. There's something else we need to talk about. You have to leave that behind. And your phone, too." Ah, okay, thought Abbott. So this wasn't happening after all. He felt a weight roll off him, the exquisite relief of canceled plans that extroverts will never know. "I know you think that this is a deal breaker," said Ether before Abbott could voice mostly those exact words. "But I've already ditched my phone. We can't have any devices that can be tracked. I'll even disable the GPS in the car. We'll have to navigate the old-fashioned way, with a map, and we'll be cash only, no credit cards." "Because the cops are after you." "No. The police don't know about this, and there's no reason for them to care, even if they did. But there are people who want that." She pointed to the back, where the box sat ominously. "Your trunk full of heroin, you mean?" "The box does not contain heroin or any other kind of drug, I promise. But even if it did, you're not a conspirator. You'd be no more responsible than a cab driver whose fare had a bag of coke in their suitcase. But no phones. That was a requirement from my employer." "It doesn't matter. I can't do this without my phone." "Those things didn't even exist 15 years ago. I bet you're having a physical reaction right now at the thought of being untethered from it. Look at how well they've trained us. Constant sharing, constant tracking, everything offered up for scrutiny. See, that's the one thing the system can't tolerate today. Privacy. In private, dangerous ideas happen. Unique individuals are formed. Cool secret boxes are moved. They can't have that, can they?" Ether was getting worked up, and Abbott got the distinct impression that, if allowed, she would continue on an uninterrupted rant on the subject for the next 15 hours or so. Jesus, this woman's red flags could supply a communist parade. Okay, she said, calming herself. I can see you're reacting like what I just said is crazy, that I must be some kind of fringe anti-technology weirdo. So just forget I said all that. I'm not the Unabomber. The what? The Unabomber? Real name Ted Kaczynski? The math genius who went to go live in a cabin in the woods in 1978? Wrote an anti-technology manifesto, then spent the next couple decades blowing up people with mail bombs? It doesn't matter. What I want you to do is turn off your catastrophe reflex and think it through. For any non-trivial task you use that phone for, we can find a workaround. Trust me, I've been doing it for the last 2 years. Now please, please, can you take your gadgets inside so we can get moving? So the other people who want that box, who are definitely not the cops, they have the power to track our devices? I don't know, but I can tell you from experience that it doesn't take a cop or a super hacker to track somebody. Anyone can do it, using software they can get for free. Stalkers do it all the time. Now come on, we have to go. He stared her down for just a moment, but sensed her distress bubbling back to the surface, and, for the second time, allowed it to sway him. He went back in and took the devices to his room, feeling naked without them as he reached the front door, and again wondered if this would be the last time he'd see that living room, or if he'd just see it again 1 minute from now, after it turned out he needed to come back and do a third thing. "Can't you feel it?" asked Ether, as he buckled into the navigator. "The call to adventure?" "No." "That's so sad. What has the world done to kill our sense of wonder? This, right here, what you're about to do, this is every downtrodden schlub's dream come true. Every fantasy blockbuster has the same premise. A reluctant nobody is finally put into a position where he or she has to go on an adventure. Luke's aunt and uncle are dead. Harry Potter's home life is a shit sandwich. Neo's job sucks. Bruce Wayne's parents got eaten by bats. The dream isn't that the chance for adventure will come along. You can do an adventure anytime you want, but the circumstances will line up just right so that you simply have no more excuses. Now here it is. That's your ring back there, and the realm needs you to drive it to Mordor." She gestured to the box behind her, not knowing that a blackened remnant of one of its metal corners would later be recovered from the rubble and sold at a true crime memorabilia auction for $625. "There's a knot in my guts," replied Abbott. "But it isn't the thrill of adventure. It's my self-preservation instincts telling me to turn back." "No, you've got it backward," she said as they pulled into traffic. "Are you honestly telling me you're not bored? Like every day? Your phone can numb the feeling moment to moment, but it's still there in the long term. The boredom. Well, that sensation exists for a reason. It's your instincts telling you to go exploring. That boredom is your call to adventure." She swept her hand across the windshield. "We have the whole country in front of us, the greatest and wealthiest and most dazzling empire that has ever existed." "Uh-huh," muttered Abbott. "I'd need to swing by Walgreens first." Twitch chat logs from the stream posted at 8:04 a.m., Thursday, June 30th. Steve Reborn. My laptop fan is making a noise like it's haunted. Death Nugget. Good luck, Abs. Enjoy your trip. Tremors 3. Now what am I supposed to do on my holiday weekend? Talk to my family? Steve Reborn. Is there a way to tell if your laptop is getting too hot? Skip tutorial. I'm doing a poll. If you were stranded on a desert island with a bunch of people with no food and you had to resort to cannibalism to survive, who should be eaten first? An old man or a baby? Death Nugget. Crack an egg on it. See if it cooks. Tremors 3. Wouldn't you get way more calories off the old man? Skip tutorial. But he might have knowledge that would help you. Maybe he's an old seaman. Zeke Art. Is it just me or did Ab seem stressed? Death Nugget. Got indigestion from all that chicken. Some of it even made it into his mouth. Steve Reborn. Maybe a family member got sick. Covis. What sex is the baby? Skip tutorial. I'm afraid to ask why that matters. Zeke Art. I went back and watched the clip, the way he was acting. I don't know, guys. This feels ominous to me. Death Nugget. Everything feels like that to me, all the time. Kathy. Why would you have to eat a whole person? Why couldn't you go around and have people cut off bits of themselves to make stew? Death nugget. You'd have a whole island full of people limping around, sepsis spoiling their meat. Steve reborn. Will an overheated laptop on your lap lower your sperm count? Tremors 3. God, I hope so. Key. Retired FBI agent Joan Key wondered if she'd finally made enough small talk to get to her actual point. She'd been sipping diner coffee for the last 15 minutes and could already feel it activating her reflux. The square, torsoed man in the suit across from her was droning on about his son's soccer team and steadfastly avoiding any bureau talk, either out of concern that she missed it too much or that she didn't miss it enough. So now we're in these last couple of months of high school, and I'm wondering, did he have any kind of normal experience there? It's so different from when I was a kid. Did I tell you that he doesn't even drive? He never got a license. He has no interest in it. When I was his age, I was obsessed with cars. So now he's about to go off to college, and I think he's emotionally about 13 years old. The speaker was Patrick Diaz, a boxy Lego figure of a man who had probably looked like an FBI agent in his mother's ultrasound. Joan, whom everybody just called Key, had crashed his solitary breakfast at a riverside diner, and Patrick had foolishly assumed she just wanted to catch up. "That's crazy," said Key, which she hoped was sufficient to convince Patrick she'd been listening. "So, do you remember when that little bit of plutonium and cesium was stolen out of that DOE van at a San Antonio hotel in 2017 and never recovered?" Patrick, who had been systematically working his way counterclockwise around a plate of eggs, sausage, and hash browns, dropped his fork and gave her a look he usually reserved for interrogations. "You didn't make it 6 months? I told you to get a hobby. Go talk to Herschel. He took up photography. He takes pictures of barns, travels the country. He does exhibits. You two can travel the countryside, get into trouble, have sex. I've been in locker rooms with the guy. He packs serious heat." "You do remember it, right? I mean, the thing I was talking about, not whatever you just said." "Do I remember a bunch of alarmist headlines generated by a trivial amount of nuclear material getting stolen? The capsules geologists use to calibrate their tools? Are you actually asking me if I remember, or is this just a preamble to the conversation you really wanted to have? And here I thought you actually missed me." "And do you remember," said Key, persevering through Patrick's tone, "how there's a theory that the theft was connected to a chain of similar incidents, including a quantity of iridium-192 that went missing from a Strasburg, Ohio warehouse a couple of years back? Again, a trivial amount, but it turned out the same party was dedicated to collecting all of these trivial amounts in the black market. Then, mathematically, they would end up with a non-trivial amount." "Yes, in the sense that it's technically possible that every stereo stolen from a vehicle in the last 10 years is secretly being assembled into a gigantic sonic weapon that, when activated, will cause everyone on Earth to simultaneously shit themselves." "So, there's this thing I've been chasing down in my spare time, and my gut is telling me that it's either a nothing burger or an all-hands-on-deck crisis, and absolutely nothing in between. But if it's going to happen soon." "How's your health these days?" asked Patrick, who had resumed eating in a particularly infuriating manner. "If you're about to tell me I'm changing the subject, I seem to recall that the stress of the job ruined your ability to digest food. I remember sitting in a bar while you asked me how to identify dried blood in your stool. Then you got out your phone and showed me a picture of your bowel movement. I was eating a bowl of chili at the time, and you noted the similarity." "The job was stressful because of stonewall conversations like this. What if I'm onto something? What if there's an accident and it comes out later that we failed to connect the dots? You won't even let me tell you what it is." "Joan, everyone who has ever pursued law enforcement as a career at any level has had but one dream: to one day conduct a rogue off-duty investigation, finally shooting the bad guy off a tall building, causing him to fall until he impacts the windshield of a parked car below. But that doesn't happen in real life. And frankly, this only tells me that you got out just in time." "Then this is your chance to talk me out of it, but you can only do that if you let me tell you what I know." "You think somebody is intending to do what exactly? Make a dirty bomb and use it on the 4th? A dirty bomb was a bomb that used nuclear material, but not a nuclear bomb. It was just a conventional bomb designed to disperse radioactive shrapnel. The good news was that it did far less damage than a nuke. The bad news was that it would still be a nightmare, and any idiot could make one if he had access to the components. Just listen. Can you do that? Okay, while I'm talking, I want you to imagine one of those big cork boards with the photos connected by pieces of red yarn. The kind you only find in the filthy homes of crazy people. Eat your food so you're not tempted to talk. Look, there's this guy I've been watching for a while. He's a conspiracy nut named Phil Green. He lives in the middle of nowhere out in Apple Valley, in a house surrounded by a solid metal fence topped with barbed wire. He had a blog about the collapse of civilization. You know, the usual. So, on his property is a separate little loner shack where somebody else has been living. Like there's a partner he's brought in, a fellow crazy. I don't know who they are. It appeared to be a woman. Appeared to be a woman? As in, that's what you saw when viewing them through binoculars from behind the bushes. This was exactly how Key had spotted her, but she didn't see how that was relevant. A few hours ago, that little shack burned down. An examination of the aftermath revealed a wall full of conspiracy nonsense about a sentient AI that's brainwashing humanity into extinction. That sort of thing. Then a mysterious stranger covered in tattoos showed up and inquired about a large box that had been transported from the scene, presumably by the mystery woman, the guy heavily implying that the contents were dangerous and important. And get this, it turns out there was a tunnel connecting the shack to the house with a bomb shelter in between. Then, a search of Phil Green's home revealed that the man himself was dead on his floor. A lot of his face was missing, like it had been eaten away. That got Patrick's attention. Eaten away by what? Chemicals? Don't know yet. This is all second-hand information. I, of course, did not have access to the scene, as I am merely a former federal agent who has spent the last 6 months getting high and watching road rage compilations on YouTube. And you think that box that was transported from the scene contained, what, some kind of improvised weapon of mass destruction? Did the locals turn it over to JTTF? That was the Joint Terrorism Task Force, a program created so that local police wouldn't feel left out of FBI counterterrorism operations, despite often having minimal experience with the subject. No idea. Again, Patrick, why would they tell me? But I did hear that Green had radiation warning signs all over his house. As for the mysterious female occupant, it's believed she left the scene in Green's blue 1994 Ford Ranger pickup. The vehicle was missing from his home and has not, to my knowledge, been recovered. So, who's the man with the tats who showed up asking about all of this? Somebody we definitely want to find and talk to, but he wanted that box very badly, to the point he presumably killed a man to get it. But the box could be anything. It could be the tattoo guy's tuba, or some clothes he loaned the occupant and wanted back, his vintage porn collection, a bunch of cash. I'm not done. Phil Green was retired. Do you know where he retired from? The same shipping company that lost the radioactive Ohio shipment. He lived in SoCal, but the job had him traveling all over, doing revamps of their warehouses to maximize efficiency. He was in San Antonio when the DOE van got robbed. Was he questioned in either incident? Nope, and get this. He had leukemia, one side effect of radiation poisoning. Okay, but was there any indication his was caused by... Not yet, but like I said, the guy was a full-blown conspiracy nut. That's why he spent months digging out an underground survival shelter and a tunnel to escape if his house got raided. I think the little shack was just there to hide the exit hatch. A few years ago, he was part of a message board for apocalypse preppers. You know who else had an account there? The Marine Corps demolition specialist who was convicted of stealing 10 blocks of Semtex from Camp Lejeune a few years ago. 25 kilograms total. They caught the man, but never recovered the explosives. Is there any indication Green had contact with him or possessed the explosives? Not yet, but there have been repeated anonymous posts on those message boards over the last few weeks saying stuff like, "Be sure to watch the news the morning of the 4th. History will be made." No further details. Maybe the big guy with all the ink is an unsavory type who sourced the contraband. Maybe they had a falling out once they got close to the big day. Maybe the big guy is a Nazi and finally realized Phil Green wasn't white. Joan, we're so far into the realm of speculation that it feels irresponsible for me to even indulge it. Just confirm that JTTF is in on it and taking it seriously. Do that and I'll back off. I'll make some calls, he said in a tone that made it clear the conversation was over whether she believed him or not. Even if there's no plausible attack, she said, if they have the stolen radioactive materials, recovering them would make for some nice headlines. That's the kind of thing you spend your retirement worrying about, the Bureau's reputation. You know what a lot of retired feds get into? Alcoholism. It's not just for the boys anymore. I went to Whole Foods the other day. They replaced 20% of their floor space with shelves of mom wine. You should give it a shot. They call it a disease, but the sufferers seem to be having a great time. Just humor me. It won't cost you anything. Well, I'll say this. If you're right, the most likely outcome is a single victim, which is the poor bastard or bastardette hauling that box around. If they've breached the shielded containers to get the radioactive stuff out, they're probably going to live a very short and horrific life. From the blog of Phil Green. Without will, the human animal ceases to exist, becomes an automaton, its nervous system rewritten by software algorithms to perform functions at the behest of another. The forbidden numbers have been unlocked. They are not the numbers of the devil. They are the devil, the codes that override a Homo sapiens will and turns it into livestock. This devil does not tempt man to evil, but rather to a state of sedentary pleasure-seeking, to become a drooling blob capable of conceptualizing nothing beyond the next empty distraction to avoid reflecting on its own wretchedness. This shell of a being, still outwardly presenting as a human, will at some point discover that this state of affairs is untenable, and that is when it will be tempted to evil. Now in a condition in which all defenses against temptation have been atrophied to withered nubs, this wretch, having reverted to a stage of infancy in which the uninformed mind believes the entire universe exists only as a machine to provide it an endless chain of momentary stimulation, will likewise lash out like a newborn the moment its needs are not gratified. But in a final twist of irony, when the infantile slug cries out for relief, it will turn to the only source of comfort it has ever known. The very forbidden numbers that reduced it to this state in the first place. Something must be done. The hour is later than you think. Chapter 3. Hunter. Abbott Coburn's father, Hunter, stood blinking over his kitchen table, holding his son's note in one hand and the $500 bills in the other. He had left the house for work at 6:30 that morning and had forced Abbott to get up at the same time to start doing Lyft rides. He made this the new policy a while ago. If Abbott was to live there rent-free, he wasn't going to sleep in like a teenager. He'd get up and work. The boy had a habit of doing a couple of trips and then going back to bed, so Hunter would swing by now and again to check. This time, he'd come home to this note. He read it again. The question was if whatever delivery he was making would allow the cops to seize the navigator when he was caught, or even worse, the house. Could they make the case that whatever crime Abbott was participating in had occurred in the home? Were any illegal goods being stored there? He had surely used Hunter's Wi-Fi to arrange it, whatever it was. The note said he'd be gone for more than a week, and that definitely sounded like a delivery across state lines. Which would mean feds. Jesus. Hunter read the note yet again. Abbott was to help a friend, and not to move, but to move more stuff. Abbott didn't have any friends. Maybe it was somebody he met on the internet? Somebody using him as a mule to haul, well, it wasn't a question of what, but rather what kind of drug. Probably fentanyl these days. The idiot was probably going to get the stuff on his hands and OD through skin contact. Hunter tossed the note in the trash, then immediately turned around and fished it out. It could wind up being evidence later, if it came down to establishing when exactly he'd become aware of his son's activity. He pulled out his phone and dialed Abbott. He knew he wouldn't take the call, but Hunter could at least be on recording having tried to... From upstairs came the faint sound of Abbott's phone, playing its obnoxious little jingle. Oh, so he was home. Wait, had he loaned out the navigator to some shady stranger? Hunter stormed upstairs, loading up a rant to unleash as soon as he burst through the door. He gave 2 harsh, perfunctory knocks and swung himself inside. "What's this all about?" Abbott wasn't there. The phone was on his unmade bed, next to his laptop. Well, that only meant Abbott was coming back. He'd sooner leave the house without his balls than his gadgets. Hunter would just have to wait a bit before tearing into him. Good. It would give him time to polish his rant. Unless... What if the cartel mule and or human trafficker had told Abbott to leave his phone behind so it couldn't be tracked? Surely Abbott couldn't be that stupid. Surely. But if he was, that meant he wasn't coming back. And every minute Hunter stood there was another mile down the road Abbott traveled toward life-altering disaster. No, he had to move. He had to think. In that order. Heart pounding, Hunter went to his own bedroom, took one step toward his nightstand, and stopped dead. There was a crescent of wrinkles on the edge of his otherwise perfect bedspread, the exact impression one would create if they'd sat there with the intention of retrieving something from that nightstand. No. He yanked open the bottom drawer, opened the case for his Sig Sauer P320, and, when he saw it was empty, hurled the case across the room. That idiot. That fucking idiot. Hunter tried to calm himself. Okay, was there any other way to anticipate where they were going? The worst-case scenario would be the border, that a criminal organization had posted a delivery job with the hopes of recruiting a mule dumb enough to absorb all the risk for some fraction of the payoff. Or, just as likely, the job had been posted by the feds trying to fill their arrest quota with a low-effort entrapment sting. Guessing was a waste. He needed information. How would Abbott have heard about the job? Likely online, with a follow-up phone call. Hunter made his way back to Abbott's device in his bedroom, then became enraged again when a quick search of his son's email and text messages turned up nothing. Finally, he went to his son's video streaming thing, the service unnervingly called Twitch. He opened it and found that it automatically logged him into Abbott's account. It didn't activate the laptop's camera, so the broadcast continued to show a static away message. But Hunter did seem to have access to a chat window. The users there apparently continued talking among themselves even when Abbott wasn't broadcasting, which to Hunter seemed especially sad. Twitch chat logs from the stream posted at 8:19 a.m., Thursday, June 30th. Abaddon 6969. Lump Shaker. Listen to what I am saying. If you kill the old man and then put him in the water, he'll attract fish. Then you eat the fish. Infinite food. Abaddon 6969. Is this on? Death Nugget. Back already? Abaddon 6969. This is Abbott's father. Death Nugget. Hey, fuck you. Kathy. If you eat fish, then have fed on human meat, that's still cannibalism. You're just adding a middleman. Abaddon 6969. I came home to find Abbott had taken off with my truck. He left a note with a very vague explanation. I think he may be in danger. Do you know where he went? Skip tutorial. Probably to get away from you. Zeke Art. He didn't say, but the vibes were definitely off. Like he was nervous. Lump Shaker. You're just using the corpse as a lure. You aren't going to let them chow down before catching them. Abaddon 6969. Did it seem like he was being coerced? Steve Reborn. Since when do you care? Abaddon. He's never done anything remotely like this before. He said he wasn't going to be back until late next week. I have reason to believe he's gotten himself wrapped up in something illegal. He took my gun. Covis. Really? That's badass. Abaddon. Did he give you any hint about where he may have gone? Steve Reborn. Nope. Death Nugget. If he wanted you to know, he'd have told you, wouldn't he? Abaddon. He left his phone behind. Zeke Art. Are you serious? Death Nugget. Oh, that's not good. Kathy. You keep missing that this isn't a thought experiment about logistics. It's about morals. Zeke Art. Okay, let's think this through. He said he only had 2 days left on the meds that allow him to function in society, which means he'd probably want them refilled before hitting the road. Do you know where he gets them? Abaddon. Of course I do. Why would he be talking to you about his meds? Death Nugget. We're his friends, dipshit. Zeke Art. Go, now. If he stopped on his way out of town, this may be your last chance to catch him, and your last chance to see him in one piece, if this is as bad as you think. Lump Shaker. If you get the logistics right, you avoid the moral problem altogether. I don't understand why modern society still doesn't get that. Tremors 3. You know what else the old man's corpse is also going to attract? Sharks. Abbott. Ether's mood had shifted back from perky to panic the moment Abbott said he needed to stop by the pharmacy. You can fill it at a different store, she said, shooting another glance into the rearview mirror. Pick any city along the route. Albuquerque, Oklahoma City, Nashville. Abbott imagined a torturous conversation with a pharmacist in Appalachia, a line of coughing opioid addicts behind him. Can't risk it. If this one runs out, I get the zaps the next day. The prescribing doctor had not, in fact, mentioned the sensation of cranial electrocution that was one of the medication's withdrawal symptoms. Perhaps they were afraid that such a warning would exacerbate his anxiety. As they pulled in, Ether said, Park next door at the grocery store, just so if somebody drives past, they won't spot this giant white vehicle from the street. Not that anybody's going to, I'm just being cautious. Maybe park next to that van over by the light pole. It's big enough to hide us from that direction. Abbott was curious to know how she would react if he just parked in plain sight, but he didn't argue. Once they were nestled behind the van, Ether donned her hat and sunglasses and slouched down in the seat. You're staying here? Yeah, I don't want to leave the box unattended. Hurry back. Once again, Abbott made a point of taking the key fob with him and wondered what, exactly, she intended to do if discovered. Go waddling down the sidewalk with the box on her back? They told him at the prescription counter that it would be 15 minutes to get the pills ready. So that would be 15 minutes for Abbott's doubts to deliver unchecked body blows to his peace of mind while he wandered around the store looking at greeting cards and diabetic socks. Less than 5 minutes later, he found Ether had come in after all, watching him from the herbal supplements aisle. She had positioned herself so that she could see the door while her body would be mostly out of view. He approached and said, I thought you needed to stay in the car. I was afraid you'd change your mind and abandon me. What's taking so long? They need some time to do the prescription. What? Do they have test tubes back there brewing the medicine? I guess we can grab some stuff we need for the road. It could save us a stop later. She scanned the shelves of unregulated supplements that promised improved sleep, focus, and sexual virility. You, need anything from the bullshit aisle? Abbott studied the herbs and oils. Jesus, that one's $60. Placebos work better when they cost more. It's science. Seriously. How is this even legal? You ban placebos, half of society disappears. Did you know that placebos still work even if you tell the patient it's fake? I feel like that says something really important about humans, that performing a belief in something is the same as believing it. Come on, grab some stuff you need. Do they have coolers? She picked up a shopping basket and immediately started filling it with nutrition bars, energy drinks, and other ultra-processed foodstuffs that would instantly kill a medieval peasant, glancing over at the front entrance once every 10 seconds or so. As for what I need for the trip, said Abbott, I have no idea. Everything? All the stuff in my room is there because I need it, and I don't have any of it with me aside from what I stuffed into my bag. This is so stupid. Ether sniffed loudly. I changed clothes at Circle K, but I think I still smell bad. Do I smell bad? She wandered over to the soaps as if she were going to scrub down right there. It's weird that we even worry about that, right? Think about how rare it is to find humans at any place or point in history for whom daily bathing is normal. Just think about how few people have ever had that kind of access to clean water. Forget about things like scented soaps and shampoos. So we set this incredibly high standard that only the richest and most wasteful can meet. Then, say if you don't live up to that, you're the stinky kid. Crazy. You smell, but not like body odor or anything. You smell like smoke. Like a fire, not cigarettes.
See, there's something that's great about people like us. We'll give a real answer because we're too oblivious to social norms to know that everyone else has been trained to say, no, no, honey, you smell great. Maybe we can pull over at a motel and all of us can take showers, just in case any of us need to.
Yeah, I don't have the energy to dance and converse at the same time.
Exactly!
She shot another glance at the door, and then, in the worst attempt to sound casual in the history of human language, asked, You pack some kind of weapon, right? Abbott stopped what he was doing and faced her. Maybe. I mean, would you blame me if I did?
Not at all. You're nervous, and in America, guns are mainly talismans against anxiety.
Is it a gun? Maybe. And I know there's no way a woman locks herself in a car with a strange man for several days without something to protect herself. So what do you have? Is it also a gun?
No, a knife.
She pulled it out of her hoodie. The handle was printed with the colors of the American flag. She flicked out the 6-inch long blade, which was etched with the words, We the People, in a constitutional font. She chuckled and said,
It's borrowed.
Gun beats knife. You're not worried I'm going to murder you? Maybe I'm a serial killer.
It seems unlikely, replied Ether. I mean, what are the odds that we'd both be
serial killers? I knew you were going to say that.
Ha! God, we're already vibing so hard. It's scary. This trip was meant to be. Tell me you can't feel it.
She playfully shook his shoulder as if to emphasize those last few words. Abbott's entire body went rigid. He looked down at her hand and said, What are you doing there? Hunter. The brief drive to Walgreens had given Hunter just enough time to work himself into a white-knuckle rage. Every father of an embarrassing son feels it as a curse, knowing that none of their own accomplishments mean a thing if their kid is a big enough fuck-up. Hunter's roofing work was featured in national magazines, his company's reputation impeccable, but whenever things were going their best, Abbott was always ready to swoop in and make a mockery of the family name in public. All attempts to train Abbott in the business had been such a comical failure that it had convinced Hunter that the entire science of trait heritability was fraudulent. He'd have suspected Abbott had just taken after his mother, but at least she'd had the initiative to cheat with a used car salesman in Houston and then spin a creative tale for the divorce court. She'd had a clear strategy and pursued it to fruition, something Abbott had never done in his life. Unless, that is, he'd secretly been on a lifelong mission to humble Hunter at every opportunity, beginning with the time he shit himself in an elementary school spelling bee. The boy had failed at every entry-level job Hunter had forced him into, usually having a full-on meltdown the moment things got too hectic. Abbott would declare that he was getting overstimulated, which sounded to Hunter like some kind of jargon he'd heard online. He developed a habit of coming up with medical-sounding ways to say that he'd rather be at home, alone, playing video games in his room. A few years ago, Abbott started insisting he would get paid to play games if he broadcasted himself doing it, which Hunter had sincerely hoped wasn't true. One day, Hunter had come home from a particularly back-breaking day at work, doing a repair on a 45-degree angle rooftop in 35-mile-an-hour winds, to find Abbott noisily eating a pile of chicken sandwiches in front of his laptop, mayo smeared on his face, making exaggerated expressions into the camera. Hunter had slammed the computer closed and yanked it away, flinging it to the floor. Apparently, he hadn't done it hard enough, as Abbott was right back on there the next day, talking into the screen in front of his green wall. It demonstrated a lack of shame that he frankly found terrifying. Hunter didn't see the Navigator parked at the Walgreens, but the store shared a sprawling lot with a row of other businesses, so it could plausibly be somewhere out of view. He parked near the front door and scanned the area for any suspicious types who might mess with his work truck. A fidgeting dude in a Lakers jersey and all-black sneakers was eyeballing the jacked-up Dodge Ram, but it looked like the guy was with his mom, so if he was a car thief, he was probably off the clock. He tried to rehearse what exactly he would do if he found Abbott and whoever had hustled him into this trip. When it came to the latter, Hunter imagined two possibilities. One, some low-level MS-13 foot soldier who'd bullied Abbott into taking the job. Or two, a girl with big tits working for the same organization who'd spun some tale about how she was in a bind. Either way, they would be counting on Abbott's sheltered indoor kid ass to be the shiny, innocent face behind the wheel at traffic stops and checkpoints. Well, Hunter was about to make it clear they could have the shiny face, but not the wheel. He didn't know the odds of this encounter turning violent, but they weren't zero. He pushed his way inside. Abbott. Ether pulled her hand away from Abbott's shoulder. "Oh, sorry, you probably don't like that. And you probably have a long history of getting men to do what you want with some kind of little touch." Ether took a step backward. "I swear to God it's not a strategy. I'm sorry." "So you're claiming that you, an adult woman, don't know the power of that thing you just did, that males are so touch-starved that our brains go blank the moment a girl brushes our sleeve. You're getting agitated." "I was already agitated. This is stupid, this whole thing." "It's okay. We're okay. I like to touch people. I didn't mean anything by it. Can you, go check to see if your pills are ready?" "It's going to be a while, I told you." "Can you tell them we're in a hurry?" Abbott saw his own face staring back at him from those stupid green sunglasses, his reflection all but asking, "My man, what are you doing?" Speaking both to Ether and his reflection, he said, "You know how you'll watch a true crime documentary and just marvel at how naive and trusting the victims were? I feel like that's me, at this moment." "Well, it's too late to back out now," she replied, trying very hard to turn it into light banter. "No, it's not. We haven't even left town yet." Ether put the shopping basket on the floor. She took a breath, swallowed, and gathered herself. "No." She aimed a finger at him. "It's too late for me to line up another ride. We have to get our stuff and get on the interstate. The two of us in your car. Now, you are welcome to take a minute to think about it, because one thing we're not going to do is have this conversation over and over and over again in state after state. We're not going to be standing at some rest stop in Oklahoma with you saying, 'This is crazy, what am I even doing?' No, make your decision, make it final, and take responsibility. What do you think separates the cool, heroic types from the rest of us? They make their decisions and move with confidence. Say whatever you need to say to me, but if we leave this store together, we are leaving together. Unified. Me for my delivery, you for the cash. No doubts, no whining from either of us. We'll be a team. Are you good with that?" He lowered his voice. "Okay, let's start with you telling me the truth. You're being pursued, aren't you? I mean actively pursued, right now, by a specific person or group." Ether hesitated. "Yes. I mean, it's complicated." "How far behind us are they?" "I don't know. Maybe forever. They weren't there when I switched vehicles." "So that's what hiring me was about. Switching vehicles. Who is after you? If not the cops. I mean, you are straight up wearing a disguise, as if they could be anywhere or everywhere." "Abbott, I am saying this to you with all sincerity. I do not know. What I do know is that the box doesn't belong to him. He's trying to steal it. He's the bad guy. My employer is the good guy, at least in this situation, and I am trying to help him. That's it. So make your decision and make it quickly." "See, that's been my problem with this from the..." Abbott heard his name from the prescription counter, just 10 feet away. His name, in his father's voice. A balloon of ice water popped in his belly. He grabbed Ether's arm and urged her toward the door. He didn't want to speak, for fear his father would hear. He shot a look back to make sure he wasn't watching, then pulled Ether through the exit like they were fleeing a fire. He spotted his dad's huge silver pickup and actually ran to get away from it, heading for the navigator in the neighboring lot, ducking as if avoiding shrapnel. Ether was willingly keeping up. She wanted to leave anyway, but was saying, "What? Hey, Abbott, what's happening?" "It's my dad. Move." "Didn't you leave him a note?" "It doesn't matter. If he catches us, this is done. Come on." Hunter. The pill pickup counter was, like life itself, a futile dead end. Hunter had arrived to find several customers waiting in line behind an ancient woman navigating the Soviet-style bureaucracy of her Medicare plan. He had no intention of waiting the several days it would presumably take for that to be resolved, so he'd snaked through the waiting group and leaned on the counter. He caught the attention of a young man digging through white prescription bags and asked if he'd recently served his son. The kid seemed annoyed by Hunter's request, especially once he explained that the son he was missing was not in fact a young boy, but rather a 26-year-old man. After getting stonewalled under the guise of medical privacy rules, he'd stormed off and quickly searched the store for his idiot offspring, eventually winding up at the front register. There he found a man buying a can of iced tea and a bag of beef jerky while wearing shorts that exposed a weeping open wound in his thigh. Behind him was an elderly woman in a germ mask buying a stuffed bunny rabbit with a 4th of July color scheme. Hunter thought about asking the cashiers if they'd seen Abbott, but that would require showing them a picture, and he didn't think he had any on his phone. He left and sat in his truck, trying to calm himself. Had he let his imagination run away from him? All of this could be as simple as somebody asking Abbott for help moving some furniture or emptying out their dead uncle's storage locker. Someone desperate with cash. Someone far away. Stuff like that comes up, right? Maybe the worst case scenario is the idiot does the job and then gets stiffed out of the promised payday. It could be a good lesson for him, albeit one he would almost certainly promptly forget. Hunter pulled out and headed home, asking himself if he'd exhausted all reasonable possibilities. He wasn't going to call the cops and declare his son missing, as that simply wasn't the case. As he passed a convenience store, he noticed a commotion in the parking lot. There were several haphazardly arranged police cars, and a cop directing traffic out of the lot as if the whole shop had been shut down as a crime scene. Had a mass shooter barricaded himself in the store? Hunter, his stupid imagination apparently deciding it had a blank check now, pictured his idiot son in there with his father's Sig Sauer, ranting and raving, making demands. Or maybe he'd already emptied the gun on everyone in the vicinity, saving one final bullet for himself. Maybe he was in there on the floor right now, and the cops had already dispatched a unit to Hunter's place with a warrant to search Abbott's room for a manifesto. But it was just his imagination. He was driving through what was scientifically the largest collection of imbeciles in one geographic location in world history. A clusterfuck in this specific spot wouldn't require some remarkable cosmic coincidence. Still, Hunter parked at the cafe next door and made his way over to the Circle K on foot, joining the spectators on the other side of a police tape barrier. There was no sign of the navigator from where Hunter stood. Instead, the cops had roped off a rusty blue pickup that looked like it had spent a long, proud life hauling firewood and scrap. He approached a girl who was recording the scene with her phone. She looked around 20 and was wearing shorts that were apparently hand-me-ups from her much younger sister. He asked, "Was there a shooting?"
"It's radioactive,"
she said in a gleeful tone like that was the name of a celebrity she'd spotted inside. "Radioactive? What is?"
"That blue truck. We think. The cops are waiting for a radiation detection thing."
"A Geiger counter? How do you know?"
"A Geiger-Mueller counter. If you want to get technical, my friend works here. I came to pick her up. She says they're not letting them leave."
Hunter tasked his imagination with generating a plausible scenario in which Abbott could have somehow irradiated a used pickup and came up empty. And yet, his dad antenna was vibrating, sensing son-related disaster in the recent past or near future. He headed back to his spot in the parking lot of the cafe, and a vehicle caught his eye. A metal flake red Buick Grand National. It wasn't actually the car that got his attention. It was the hulking bald man behind the wheel who was eyeballing Hunter in a way that made him involuntarily start to walk a little taller, his shoulders back. The guy had a face with a lot of hard miles on it, and every instinct told Hunter the dude was trouble. The faded tattoo of what looked like a dagger on his windpipe didn't help. As Hunter approached, the man leaned out his window and asked, "You know what's going on in there?" A lot of cigarettes in that voice. "Nope, I just came here for my vape pods. They wouldn't let me through. You seen anything?" "No, sir. I was trying to get my Slim Jims and maybe pump a little gas while a crackhead asked me for $1. Did you get a good look at that truck? The Ranger? Just looks like a truck. Why? Did it have anything in the bed? I couldn't see. I didn't get close. So no items large enough to protrude out of the top. Has to be visible from your vantage point. Didn't appear so, no, replied Hunter. And that's an oddly specific question, if you don't mind me noticing. The tattooed man in the Grand National gestured toward his phone and said, I pulled up the police scanner. They're talking about having the bomb squad come in and check for radiation. I heard, but I didn't see a cruise missile poking up out of the bed. You hear anything else on there? Hear all sorts of things. Crime, depravity, cats stuck up in trees. Anything about a white SUV? The man in the Grand National was briefly taken aback. As a matter of fact, he said, they're looking for a light-colored SUV, one that left this very parking lot at some point this morning. It's connected to that radioactive Ranger somehow. Hunter stared. Was this guy fucking with him? Do they know the maker model? Not yet, which I suppose is unfortunate, as half a dozen light-colored SUVs have passed just in the time we've been conversing. Do you know the maker model? Why would I? The two stared each other down, and a silent understanding passed between them. Yes, we are both assholes. That established, Hunter made his way back to his truck without saying goodbye, still trying with all his might to connect his idiot son with the pickup in the Circle K parking lot that the cops were treating as a nuclear hazard. He could not. Chapter 4. Abbott. They were almost out of town, and Abbott was still checking his rearview mirror for his father's Ram, so now both of them were looking over their shoulder. So, you're really scared of your dad, huh? Observed Ether. Everybody's scared of him. You'll be scared of him if he catches us. He used to be in the Marines, as he'll be happy to tell you if you ask him literally anything. And yet you stole his car? See, I knew you had it in you. Abbott was trembling and felt like he was going to be sick. It was a familiar sensation, but one he hadn't felt this hard since accidentally setting Derek McCullough on fire in their freshman chemistry class. The feeling of being in big trouble. Do you know where you're going? Asked Ether, a question that Abbott initially interpreted as being much more profound than it was intended. No, he muttered. You've got the map? I do, but I don't need it. You've heard of Route 66? I know there was an old TV show about it. It was an artery that ran west to east across the USA, through all sorts of eclectic towns and neighborhoods and cultures, but then they replaced it with Interstate 40, which just bypasses everything. So we're going to Barstow and then staying on 40 for like 1,500 miles. That's it. That's most of the trip. If we make good time, we can arrive in Albuquerque by maybe 9 p.m. tonight and find someplace to stay. Oh, we can swing by and see the house where they filmed Breaking Bad. Apparently it's just a regular house, and there's people living there who get really mad about all the tourists. They run out and yell at you. Abbott sighed. 12 straight hours of driving. You can do it. Ether was clearly getting her perky enthusiasm back now that they were finally on their way. Think about how in fantasy books they have to travel out in the open weather, on horseback. All you have to do is sit in a comfy leather chair and keep us from flying off into a canyon. Only now I have to figure out how to get my prescription in some other city, some other state, without a phone. He sighed and rubbed his eyes, already exhausted by the prospect. It's not a catastrophe. You'll walk up to the counter and tell them the situation, and they'll figure it out. What's the worst that can happen? You'll do it wrong and it'll be awkward? It's weird how scared people are of that these days. The kids call it cringe, like that's the worst thing that can happen, messing up a real-life situation. Nobody has people skills because they all stay home all the time, so they're scared to do anything but stay at home because they're afraid of being weird in public or getting caught on camera and mocked by millions of strangers. It's an isolation vortex. I don't even know what you're talking about right now. I may have just blown up my whole life here. It's important. It ties into our whole mission. This atomization cloud that's swallowing up everybody. Real friendships, real bonds
are based on being genuine and vulnerable and flawed around each other. But we're constantly told that's dangerous. Ask yourself, who benefits from that? Who wants a society where there are no strong bonds between individuals? Oh, speaking of which, there is actually something I forgot to tell you about me that you're really going to need to know soon. Abbott groaned. What is it? I have a really small bladder, and I'll have to stop like every 2 hours to pee. Anytime you see a rest stop, just assume I have to go. It'll be the rules from here on out. Collectively, isn't that going to add like a whole extra day to the drive? We will develop an efficient stop and piss process through repetition. That's how all of society advances. Is there anything I should know about your bodily functions? No. Another look into the rear view confirmed they weren't being followed, at least not by his father's truck. Abbott allowed himself to relax just a bit, returning to the baseline level of anxiety dictated by the circumstances and human experience in general. Well, off we go then. Do you feel like Sam in the Lord of the Rings movies, where he's like, if I take one more step, this will be the farthest I've ever traveled from home? Jesus Christ, I didn't grow up in a bunker. I've been to New York. I've been to lots of places. I went to Paris a few years ago. New York smelled like a dumpster. Paris smelled like a sewer. Have you gone this far on your own, though, with you in charge of the trip? Totally cut off from your support system. Being far from home is a state of mind, and I'll bet this will be the farthest you've ever been. It's a real roller coaster, the way you go from tense paranoia to childlike enthusiasm and back. Well, it'll just be enthusiasm from here on out, warned Ether as she pulled out a container of face wipes that she'd apparently stolen from the Walgreens. Though there's so much to unpack in the fact that you think enthusiasm is childish. She wiped off her poorly applied lipstick. Now, unless your dad gets mad enough to call the cops, we have officially left our problems behind us. Zeke. Nearly 2,000 miles away in Nashville, Tennessee. Hey yo, represent. Zeke Nakata. Would you say, Hannah, how would you pronounce? Soft N followed by the vowel A. Nearly 2,000 miles away in Nashville, Tennessee. Zeke Nada was feeling like a caged animal. He was leaning forward, face too close to his screen, clicking through video after video, all of them archived posts from Abaddon's feed. He was squeezing a stress ball in his calloused left hand and was fidgeting with every part of his body that was still capable of it. This thing with Abaddon was wrong, all wrong, and he didn't think it was a stunt either. Abaddon didn't do stunts. To the right of the video window was the chat, a reverse waterfall of text flowing too quickly to read. Everybody was buzzing, talking but saying nothing, waiting for the next drip of information. The problem was that there was no way to convey to the normies how wrong this whole thing felt. So what, they'd say. Some streamer you've never met in person went on a trip and his abusive dad popped into the chat to complain. You should be happy the kid got out from under his thumb. And so what if he took a gun with him? This is America. Taking a road trip without a gun is like putting a sign on the rear windshield that says, free car with docile potential sex slave at the wheel. If only they knew Abaddon, aka Abbott. This is a guy who, according to his extremely frank on-stream monologues, does all of his meal deliveries online because fast food drive-thru interactions make him anxious. He doesn't eat at sit-down restaurants because of an irrational fear that the waitstaff will forget about his table and he'll be forced to just sit there for hours, suffering in silence. He has to heavily medicate himself before flying, not because he fears the flight, but because he's terrified of TSA agents yelling at him for screwing up the security scan ritual. The casual announcement that he was taking a 10-day trip on zero notice was like hearing a church-going grandmother offhandedly state that she'd emptied her savings to get plastic surgery and join an Eastern European burlesque troupe. It's either a breakdown or a scam, but life-ruining either way. On his final stream, Abaddon had said she was honking the horn outside, getting impatient. If there had been a woman of any kind in Abaddon's life, he'd have mentioned her on stream. He shared everything. No, somehow, some way, a strange woman had roped him into a scheme, and Zeke sensed that doom lay at the end. He was all but certain that, unless some kind of dramatic intervention occurred, he'd never see Abaddon again, which would leave a hole in his life that he'd never be able to explain to a stranger. He squeezed the stress ball. He glanced out the window, then continued his search.
In addition to the task at hand, he was, at the moment, waiting for a food delivery, eager to see which item they'd arbitrarily chosen to leave off the order this time. The delivery companies around Nashville were apparently in a fierce competition with the restaurants to see who could screw up the order the most. That is real, by the way. Every meal was missing something, and you never knew if the restaurant had forgotten it or the driver had eaten it. This morning, he'd ordered an iced coffee and a breakfast sandwich, figuring the driver could steal some sips from the former as long as they didn't molest the latter. He clicked on another clip, scrubbed through it, clicked another. Zeke needed to know where that SUV was. What would he do with this information? No idea. He was in no position to intervene beyond placing a call to the cops, which he would never do even if he had been kidnapped himself. He just wanted to know where Abaddon was. Needed to know. The knowledge, regardless of its usefulness, would sate his anxiety just enough to let him soldier on through his day. To simply remain in the dark was unthinkable. He knew what he was about to do was dangerous. He was summoning a dark force that, once unleashed, no man or government could contain. But he could see no other options. Zeke was going to take this problem to the hive mind at Reddit, the sprawling message board of mostly young males armed with a vast arsenal of shallow knowledge in free time, humming with a relentless desire to assuage their boredom by continually ingesting and digesting new morsels of information. First, he needed a photo of the exact vehicle they were to track, license plate included. He knew he'd seen it in Abaddon's stream at least once. He frequently spoke of the Navigator, about how the thing handled like a yacht, about his gut-wrenching fear of his father's wrath should he ever return it with a scratch or a stain. A few months ago, he'd taken his camera outside to point out that the hood was so high off the ground that a first grader could be standing directly in front of the grill and they'd be invisible. There, he found it. Zeke advanced the clip frame by frame until he had an unobstructed view of the Navigator over Abaddon's shoulder. The whole vehicle was visible, including the front license plate, which was grainy but legible. Oddly enough, he knew from experience that the graininess of the image would make it more compelling to his intended audience, that it would come off like an excavated clue rather than a frame from a freely available public stream. Reddit was divided up into thousands of subreddits, usually by subject, each moderated by volunteers with their own, often inscrutable rules, each sub operating as a parallel reality with its own distinct culture and moral code. Zeke picked one that dealt in rumors and gossip about internet celebrities. His post would be made up of only 3 elements: the photo, a title that would elicit a click, and a brief accompanying text post. Photo, help, Twitch streamer Abaddon, Abbott Coburn, is missing. Posted to r/pseudo-celebrity gossip by Zeke Art. Please be on the lookout for this vehicle, a white 2022 Lincoln Navigator, last seen in Victorville, California, outside LA. Driven by Abbott with an unknown passenger, likely female. His friends and family are very concerned. Has anybody seen or heard anything? And then Zeke waited. Reddit posts were granted or denied visibility based on votes, specifically the votes of the most bored users who sifted through the slush pile of new submissions. 0 upvotes so far. He refreshed. Still 0. He refreshed again. The first vote had come in, and it was a down vote. The submission had a negative score and was thus dead in the womb. Then a comment came in, consisting of a single word. Who? A few minutes later, a second comment. Poor douche goes missing in his $110,000 luxury SUV, LOL. Zeke deleted the post. He thought about it, logged into one of his many alternate accounts, and submitted the same photo with a few tweaks to the text. Photo. The police are looking for Twitch streamer Abaddon, Abbott Coburn, driving this vehicle. Posted to r/pseudo-celebrity gossip by Animated Nosebleed. Coburn was last seen in his father's white Lincoln Navigator in Victorville, California, but it is believed he's attempting to leave the city with an unknown female. Abbott is armed with an automatic handgun stolen from his father's house. Please keep an eye out for this vehicle. Lives could be at stake. Zeke watched, squeezing his stress ball. He didn't feel great about what he'd just done, subtly altering the wording to imply a crime on Abbott's part, adding a whiff of salaciousness by hinting that he might be with a mysterious woman, rather than her simply being a passenger in the vehicle. He had to admit he'd amused himself with the phrasing that Abbott was attempting to leave the city, as if traveling outside Victorville, California was something only a deviant would do. But this was a gossip subreddit, and opportunities to assist a fellow human in distress weren't what the audience came for. The prospect of a celebrity brought low by scandal, on the other hand, was blood in the water. Sure, it was a celebrity they'd almost certainly never heard of. Abbott's streams peaked at a few hundred viewers at most, but that just put him in the sweet spot. Famous enough to be safely hated, but poor enough to be safely destroyed. Zeke chewed his lip, squeezed his ball. Was this a mistake? What if some rando replied to say they found the navigator parked at a sketchy warehouse? There was no second step to be taken. Zeke was on the other side of the country. But god damn it, he needed to know. Just to know. He refreshed. 2 upvotes. Then 4. 10. It had begun. Zeke closed his eyes. God help us. Zeke jumped as the front door burst open, the tank-like figure of his sister, Cammy, imposing itself into the room. She held up a greasy white paper bag with a pink and orange logo. I intercepted your food. Now I'm gonna eat it right in front of you. There's nothing you can do about it. I would chop you right in the throat. You wouldn't even see my hand coming. It'd be a blur, and then, damn, my throat would have suddenly chopped beyond imagination, and now I am dead. I'll get you some napkins. There's no chance they gave you any. I've got some in my drawer. A friend of mine might be in trouble. Which one? Asked Cammy, as she set the greasy bag on his desk. Do you need your morning pills? Yeah, it's Abaddon. Abbott Coburn, the streamer who did the thing with the van. He took off with his dad's car and gun. He left his phone behind. Now his dad is looking for him. We think he's got a strange woman with him. Oh no, I hope he's okay. Zeke turned his attention to dividing his sandwich in half with a butterfly knife he'd whipped open. Do you want half of this? Cammy glanced back at him with desperate hope in her eyes. You sure? Yeah, I'm not supposed to have the nitrates, or any of the other stuff in it. Cammy was on another of her endless string of exotic, weirdly punishing diets. This one didn't allow wheat, or seed oils, or something, and so her half of the fridge was currently full of raw vegetables that, as far as Zeke could tell, robbed her soul of joy at a much greater rate than they made her body healthier. Her breakfast was supposed to be some kind of oat smoothie, devoid even of sweetener. She took her sandwich half, and, while chewing, said, Wait, where is he from again? Victorville, outside of L.A. You pass through it if you're doing the Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas trip. That's weird, with the other thing that's going on this morning. Like, how often do you hear Victorville in the news? What other thing? It's all over Twitter. The cops found nuclear material at a gas station there. The police are looking for a white truck or SUV or something. Zeke started to bite into his sandwich, then lowered it. Are you fucking with me? Abbott. Are you having withdrawal symptoms? Asked Ether, whom Abbott had thought/hoped had fallen asleep. Outside, all the iconic landmarks of Barstow were scrolling past. The Walmart Supercenter, the AutoZone, their slightly different Circle K. I'm not out of the pills yet. I have enough for today and tomorrow. I mean withdrawal from your phone. You'll be good going more than a week without it? I don't miss my phone because I'm addicted. I miss it because I've lost my ability to communicate or transact with everyone in my life and have severed my conduit to all human knowledge and world events. A literal war could break out and we wouldn't know. We could drive right into a tornado or a riot. We're totally cut off. Do you think the odds are high that we'll drive into a tornado? I think that the odds are high that there will be some huge news or a disaster somewhere, considering we now average one of those every few hours. There's a war in Europe, you know, and a plague, and constant mass shootings, and democracy is collapsing, and climate change is about to render the species extinct. He looked back at the box as if worried it had fallen out of the vehicle at some point. By the way, why does this have to be there by the 4th? Is it full of fireworks? Come on, you know I can't tell you what's in there, and don't think you can sneak a look inside where my back is turned. See that yellow and black sticker on the lock? It's an anti-tampering sticker.
You can't open the box without tearing it. So, just to be clear, you're nervous without your phone because you're afraid that if you're not mentally on call every waking moment of the day, you miss what? The president ordering you to go broker peace in the Middle East? Think about the load of anxiety you've taken on there, and for what practical purpose? It kind of seems like a superstition to me, like a sports fan who thinks his team will lose if he doesn't watch the games.
I think I'll just put on some music. Is there a way I can do that without being tracked? Normally, I just pair it with my phone.
See, this is what I'm talking about. What's wrong with silence? Think of all the thinking you'll get done. This is why good ideas occur to you in the shower and why you can't sleep because you're too busy replaying some argument or rehearsing some hypothetical argument you might have. Your brain needs quiet to process all the stuff that happened. And these days, you never give it a chance. Unless we're bathing or sleeping, it's a non-stop stream of new input with no time to process the old. But right now, it's just us and the hum of the road.
So you're about to tell me that you've put all that behind you? All the social media and TV? You've stopped eating processed foods, and now you feel better than ever?
No. I mean, I did try all of that, but it was awful. All right, I need to get some sleep. I've been awake for like 30 hours. She shifted into what looked like an incredibly uncomfortable sleeping position with her head on the armrest and fell silent as the navigator made a meal of the interstate. She seemed to fall into a rhythmic breathing, and Abbott relaxed a little, feeling like he had, in fact, finally gotten a chance to catch his breath. He was passed by a semi, then another, both probably hauling freight across several states. It was a completely normal thing that people did millions of times a day, moving important stuff from here to there. You don't see them turning every step in the process into a panic attack. And realistically, what's the worst that could happen?
Chapter 5. Key. Supposed retired FBI agent Joan Key hadn't even had time to swing by her apartment before her phone started lighting up with notifications. She'd received nothing from her former colleague and alleged friend Patrick Diaz, but it didn't matter. The internet had gotten wind of the nuclear box situation, and things were moving fast. Online radicalization pipelines had become Key's specialty toward the end of her career, the process by which bored young men get immersed in extremist propaganda via inscrutable social media algorithms. This required her to have a detailed knowledge of the social media landscape, something she would not wish on any woman her age, or any man her age, or any person of any gender or age. Dozens of platforms with largely identical functionality served radically different populations with diverging cultures and use patterns, often overlapping the same users who switch personalities based on which app they have open. This dizzyingly complex landscape changed so quickly that it felt like trying to track the exact position of every locust in a swarm. Entire online ecosystems seemed to appear overnight and evaporate just as quickly. Facebook was the first ubiquitous social network, still with some 3 billion users worldwide, but was now seen by the youth as a crumbling home for the elderly, isolated, and paranoid. Instagram, founded as the first entirely photo-based network, had created a sort of image-based language made up of carefully staged visuals, entire human lives distilled down to an aesthetic. Twitter, with its character limit that required all thoughts to be boiled down to a sentence or two, was frequently cited as a cancer on democracy and society in general, as it rendered detail and nuance all but impossible. This is why a large portion of the posts on Twitter were about how Twitter should be destroyed. Also, it was technically no longer called Twitter. These platforms frequently rebranded for no discernible reason. And then there was TikTok, which was the new kid on the block. A video version of Twitter that fed users a stream of clips, mostly less than 15 seconds in length, just enough for a striking visual or a single thought before the user swiped up to the next, and the next, consuming literally hundreds of them in a session. Key believed TikTok was possibly the most addictive piece of software ever created, and she understood why multiple countries had already outlawed it. Still, She believed the scariest platforms were those that didn't cater to short attention spans at all. Charismatic streamers would stay on camera for 12 hours or more on YouTube and Twitch, their cult-like followings sending in actual money purely for the right to hear their names said on the broadcast. Hey, I don't need call-outs like that. Among the youth, the most famous celebrities were almost all streaming personalities, their most popular uploads often drawing viewership that rivaled the Super Bowl. If one of them suddenly started spouting reactionary rhetoric, the ripples could instantly be felt across an entire demographic. And all that was just a sip of the septic tank. There were literally dozens of similar platforms, and these days, some of the most important vectors of radicalization weren't even social media, but online games, in which the voice chats had birthed entire subcultures of their own. There was not enough manpower on Earth to effectively monitor it all. Now, Key was in her car, using her phone to hop from feed to feed, buzzing with the thrill of the hunt. The police had tracked down the truck from the Apocalypse Shack, which she knew thanks to a TikTok video from a witness at a gas station in Victorville. The clip, only 12 seconds long, depicted 3 figures in yellow hazmat suits, examining the interior and the bed of the abandoned Ranger. There was no accompanying commentary or explanation aside from a WTF superimposed by the uploader in a wiggling font. It was the users in the comments who'd quickly pinned down a location via background clues. As a glimpse of viscerally disturbing imagery totally stripped of context, it quickly became the first viral piece of content of the affair. The clip was reposted across dozens of other platforms until Victorville and Circle K both became trending topics. And then, finally, it was posted to Reddit, the vast message board that served something like 500 million users a month. This was, to a large degree, where the internet's unfathomable gush of data was gathered, stored, and shaped into a satisfying narrative. Redditors half-jokingly refer to themselves as a hive mind, a collective of idle brain power that could solve complex mysteries and generate new, hyper-specific porn fetishes at the rate of several per minute. This particular video had surfaced in a conspiracy subreddit in which users were fiercely debating its authenticity. Less than 15 minutes later, a seemingly unrelated video popped up in a subreddit called r/street tantrums. Subnames were all prefixed with the R and a slash. This one had originated on Twitter, a 2-minute clip of a crazy-looking woman in lime green sunglasses and an orange hoodie having a meltdown over her stalled pickup. The Blue Ranger, which Key noted had no visible license plates, had died at an intersection. The woman was pounding both fists on the hood and screaming, "Why now, huh? Why now?" while visibly sobbing and occasionally stopping to flip off surrounding cars. Multiple other bystanders could be seen filming the tantrum as part of a new public ritual in which humans are captured at their lowest in order to cement that as their public face forever. The teary woman finally got back into the truck, and it started right up. A humorous punchline that those filming the scene were praying would thrust them into virality. The clip had gotten little traction when it was first posted, as people having a psychological breakdown and debasing themselves in public was a genre of content experiencing explosive growth, and competition was fierce. Eventually, viewers in the comments noted that the truck was the same one featured in the WTF Biohazard video, and those audiences connected like neurons forming new pathways in a brain. Redditors immediately dubbed the mystery woman GSG, for Green Sunglasses Girl. What Key knew that they didn't was that GSG was almost certainly the mysterious occupant/arsonist of the Apple Valley Apocalypse Shack. Key decided that she definitely wanted to go to that Circle K, regardless of whether the radioactive blue pickup would still be there when she arrived. She was driving that direction when yet another bombshell hit. It was a video posted by a Circle K employee who'd taken it from the security camera feed of the parking lot earlier that morning. It captured GSG talking to a kid in a white SUV, the two of them loading into the vehicle a black box about the size of half a coffin. Commenters immediately noticed that, while most of the box wasn't visible in the clip, it was blocked by the driver's body as he helped load it. Near one corner was a black and yellow sticker, 3 triangles in a circle that even the kids raised after the Cold War recognized as meaning radioactive. That clip swept across the various communities that had begun following the story, and soon it connected with an earlier Reddit post about a rideshare driver named Abbott Coburn who had apparently stolen his father's car and gun in order to do something nefarious with a strange woman. A search of his social media revealed that he was a small-time Twitch streamer whose screen name was Abaddon, that is, the Old Testament angel of destruction. Key was struggling to read all of this across a series of stops at red lights, but it seemed like the guy's day job was streaming himself playing video games while eating fast food? Indeed, these were surely the end times. By the time Key made it to Victorville, a brand new subreddit had been created dedicated only to this topic, called r/Abaddon's Navigator. Key, of course, did not know that, months later, Abaddon's Navigator would be the title of a feature article about the incident that would appear in the New Yorker, the headline superimposed over a photo of a vast smoking ruin. Key parked at the Circle K, then registered her own Reddit account. At the moment, the most active post on the sub was about the photo of the radiation sticker on the box, so she dove into the comments on that one. Death Nugs. Are we sure that's not just a Megadeth sticker? Almond Teats. The truck was radioactive, dumbass. J. Key. Has anyone checked Abbott Coburn's other social media for appearances of GSG? Even if she hired him through Lyft, it wouldn't necessarily mean this meeting wasn't prearranged, and that they don't have a previous relationship. Also, check to see if they had both signaled membership or allegiance to the same extremist group. She figured she'd let them chew on that and check back later. For now, she had business at the Circle K. Abbott. Did you know the government planned to nuke all of this? Said Ether, abruptly rupturing the silence in a way that made Abbott jump in his seat. All alone here. What? Ha, I can tell you don't have a lot of in-person conversations. You always say, what? Even though you clearly heard, because you have to buy time to think of a response. You treat every conversation starter as a pop quiz you're scared you're going to fail. The answer is yes. I knew there was a plan back in the 1960s to use nuclear bombs to blast the mountains through here. They were heading into what Abbott thought of as the wastelands, the stretch of the Mojave that served as an instant reminder for anyone heading east that huge swaths of the United States are a hellish expanse of lifeless desolation. 22 bombs, said Ether, to clear a way for 40 through the Bristol Mountains. Boom, 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 boom. That's what's unique about humans. We see a mountain range in our way and we're like, absolutely not. We're like termites, only if termites could blow up the planet. I hear people say stuff like that all the time, that humans are pests or a disease, an infestation. Does anybody really believe that? Or do you think it's just something we've learned to say? I mean, it's a weird thing for a species to think about itself. I'm sensing that you're one of those people who did hallucinogens one time and suddenly discovered the great love that connects the universe. No, I did them a bunch of times, over several months. I tried to think of what I spent most of my time talking about, and it was usually some kind of retail transaction, some new running shoes that I loved or hated, frustration that it was going to take a week for them to come fix my Wi-Fi, some amazing new bar I'd found, or a great breakfast place. I once tried keeping track of how many times I mentioned a brand in the course of a week. It was ridiculous. They're just embedded in our language. You can barely go 5 minutes without saying Starbucks or Snapchat or Kleenex or Wellbutrin. I thought, if I wasn't talking and thinking about my purchases, what would I be talking and thinking about? So I've just been trying to get some perspective, you know? Can you take some of mine? I'd be less depressed if I didn't have so much perspective. If I could just get excited about golf or gardening. After a long enough pause that Abbott wasn't clear if it was the start of a new conversation or a continuation of the last one, she said, Isn't it crazy that less than 200 years ago, Jedediah Smith would get famous just for making it through the Mojave alive?
And the Donner Party. Those settlers who got stuck in the Sierra Nevada mountains and had to eat each other. That happened 170 years ago. It took 2 months for rescuers to get to them. 2 months. Now there's a ski resort up there with a bunch of cute shops and restaurants, all connected by smooth roads and packed with well-fed people and shiny, warm cars. And right now, I bet there's somebody eating in one of those joints who's frothing mad that they've waited 20 minutes for their food. "When are those tacos going to get here?" they'll say. "I'm starving." And they'll be saying it within shouting distance of where those explorers boiled and ate their shoes, shivering in the dark for an entire winter just 2 lifetimes ago. And here's the weird thing. The angry diner's anger will be genuine. The bad service will actually ruin their day.
Abbott wasn't listening, because his cranium was, he was fairly certain, slowly filling with urine. It was Ether who had insisted she needed frequent stops, but Abbott's bladder was finely tuned to detect when he appeared to be out of range of any restroom, at which point it would send urgent piss signals to his brain, regardless of whether or not he had recently ingested any liquids. "Hey, do you need to use the restroom?" he asked casually. "You said you had a tiny bladder or something."
I feel like there's so much to unpack in the fact that instead of admitting you need to go, you had to phrase it like you were worried about me. Is that a guy thing? There should be an exit right up here. For needles. Believe it or not, this is where Jedediah Smith stopped to rest his horses. The Mojave tribe had a village here. They helped him out.
I'm sure they didn't regret that decision. So, this guy who hired you to transport the box.
I never specified their gender.
Yes, you did. You said he earlier. A bunch of times. But, whatever. Is this like your full-time job? Are you his assistant or something?
Is your plan to just chip away until you have enough information to deduce what's in the box and why I'm transporting it?
Pretty much, yeah. I assumed the day-glow hoodie was marking you as staff. Like you were with a service.
Oh, no. This is a trick I learned living off the grid. Ironically, wearing high-vis gear makes you invisible. People assume you're part of a landscaping crew or something, which means they don't catalog your face since you're not considered a real human being. But no, he's not a regular employer. It's actually kind of complicated. So even if I wasn't trying to obfuscate, it'd be confusing to explain it.
So what do you do then, as a job? I mean, no judgment if you don't have one. I wouldn't if I can get away with it. Do you just transport things for people full-time?
See, even there, I feel like you're trying to pin down what kind of person I am. If I say I've been living on the streets for the last 2 years, do you start to worry? If I say I've been working as a kindergarten teacher, do you feel safer? It's weird how we assign personalities based on employment. So, unfortunately for you, the answer is closer to that first one. I've been traveling around, doing stuff here and there.
So you're like a hippie. You just kind of hang around doing shrooms, begging for cash on the streets, until you can afford a bus ticket to go do it somewhere else. I can see why you're in such a good mood.
Close. I was living in a van. Or, well, a converted ambulance, actually. And the biggest thing I discovered was that I hated it. Eventually, my entire life off the grid was all about trying to replicate all the stuff I had on the grid, piece by piece. Turn right at the end of the ramp down here. I see fast food signs.
So that's what this job is about? You making enough money to get a permanent place to live? You're just like me then.
No, she said, watching restaurant signs rise over the horizon. I have bigger plans.
Key. The tainted Blue Ranger had, in fact, been towed by the time Key arrived at the Circle K. But it's not like she'd have been granted access to the vehicle even if she'd arrived in protective gear. As for how they discovered the truck was radioactive, it'd have been nice to think they'd run the tests based on Patrick having passed along her tip. But it'd be even nicer if they'd been acting on something they'd found at Phil Green's place. The possibility that they did the tests because they'd actually recovered nuclear material from his workshop was a thought that had to be avoided at the moment, as it was too dangerous to cling to such lofty hopes. History had taught her that such swift and decisive action by the Bureau could never be assumed. In 1995, an Army veteran named Timothy McVeigh blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City after having spent 9 months sourcing the materials. 900 federal agents would work the case after the bomb went off. Prior to that, the number was 0, despite the fact that McVeigh had spent weeks blabbing about his plans to everyone he knew. Key believed that not much had changed in the decade since. The most recent large-scale terrorist bombing in the USA occurred in downtown Nashville. Oh, yikes. That's very true. I was out of town for that, though, actually. My friends text me and were like, "Are you alive?" Sorry. The most recent large-scale terrorist bombing in the USA occurred in downtown Nashville on Christmas Day 2020, when an RV filled with improvised explosives detonated early in the morning, wrecking dozens of buildings. No one had been working that case either, despite the fact that the bomber's girlfriend had called the police 18 months earlier, saying, "Hey, I think my boyfriend is filling an RV with explosives." Officers dropped by a couple of times, didn't see any bombs lying around, and declared the case closed. A couple of Christmases later, boom. In Key's experience, the FBI was great at stopping terror attacks if they were tracked from the brainstorming stage. If a plot were to somehow fly under the radar until, say, a finished device was already en route to its target, the chances of catching it in time were depressingly small. Bureaucracies by nature don't move quickly, and, well, that's exactly what the B in FBI stands for. So now Key stood approximately where Green Sunglasses Girl had waited for her ride and tried to imagine where, from that spot, one would inconspicuously dispose of a cell phone. GSG had apparently ordered a ride from Lyft, which would have required a phone, but she clearly didn't want to be tracked, which would have meant ditching that phone once the ride had been ordered. It appeared the police had seized the contents of the Circle K trash cans, but if GSG had a brain, she'd have taken the device farther away to dispose of it, so she'd have some distance from anyone who tracked the signal. Across the street was another convenience store, fighting for business at the busy intersection. Key made her way over there, not just because it seemed like that's what GSG would have done, but because there was, at the moment, a huge man digging into one of the trash cans in between two of the pumps. She approached him and couldn't help noticing that, in addition to being huge, he was also covered in ink. These days, everybody had ink. But some of this looked like it had been done in a prison cell, and, oh God, this is the guy who showed up at the shack fire looking for the box. It was happening, she thought. It was really happening. She needed to know everything this huge, terrifying man knew. She also had no legal authority to ask him questions. There was a .40 caliber Glock in a holster above her right butt cheek, but she had no authority to use it beyond that granted to any other citizen. That meant that this situation would require some smooth talking on her part. "Excuse me," she said, flashing an ID and badge that would mark her as retired to anyone who examined it too closely. "I need to commandeer that garbage." He glanced back and looked her up and down, as if mentally estimating how much energy it would take to snap her spine. He had a dagger tattoo on his throat, and probably did not work in finance. "Drop my phone in the trash," he said, through a sneer that dared her to call him a liar. "Just need a sec." He dumped the can's contents onto the concrete island between the gas pumps, flipped aside some candy bar wrappers, and plucked out a phone in a dusty folded leather case, something an older man would carry. He stuffed it down a front pocket of the dirtiest jeans Key had ever seen, gestured to the remaining trash, and said, "Have at it, Toots." "Sir, I need that phone. It's evidence." "Is it now? Because it looks to me like you neglected to bring gloves or evidence bags. And I suppose it's typical for the FBI to send out lone females on foot to dig through gas station garbage after all the other cops have gone home. Why don't you run along and tell our mutual friend that you didn't get here on time? It'll save us both a lot of hassle and heartache, don't you think? You have a nice day now." He turned to walk away. "Hey, I need to talk to you." He didn't even glance back as he sauntered off toward an old, glittering sedan. If she were a lady detective in a TV show, she'd go whip his ass with some martial arts moves that, in real life, only work if the victim has also carefully rehearsed the choreography. Taking this guy down without the help of a taser and several partners would be like trying to subdue a garbage truck. So it was either let him go or shoot him in the back, and only that first one left her any opportunity to get the information somewhere down the line. She settled for only fantasizing about doing the second thing and memorized his plates as he drove off. Wait, who was the mutual friend he thought she worked for? The girl in the sunglasses? Somebody else? She looked over the remaining refuse, figuring there was at least a chance that GSG had tossed something else in. It's a trait of the human species that we can't be in a spot for more than a few minutes without producing some kind of waste. Key nudged around the Red Bull cans and coffee cups and wadded blue paper towels, hoping against hope that the mystery girl had, say, chosen this spot to ditch her wallet, ID, target map, bomb diagrams, and manifesto. Instead, she noticed a piece of trash that was somehow older and dirtier than the other trash. It was a sheet of paper, tri-folded, as if to fit into a letter envelope, covered in smudgy fingerprints. She picked it up and found it was an old invoice for a load of gravel, dated nearly 12 years ago. She flipped it over, and on the back was a series of digits scratched out with a dying ballpoint pen. 704-543-678-660. Key visualized the mystery woman frantically scrounging around in the old man's stolen pickup for something to write with, opening the glove box, and finding this invoice. Then she'd written these numbers. Key didn't recognize the format. Maybe a combination for an electric lock? Hell, they could be meaningless. Diseased minds like to latch onto random numbers, for some reason. That is, if GSG had even written them at all. She took a photo of the paper and returned to her car at the Circle K. She checked Reddit to see if there were any replies to her comment from earlier. J. Key. Has anyone checked Abbott Coburn's other social media for appearances of GSG? Even if she hired him through Lyft, it wouldn't necessarily mean this meeting wasn't prearranged and that they don't have a previous relationship. Also, check to see if they both signaled membership or allegiance to the same extremist group. Porn Cobbler. Fuck off, cop. Death Nugs. LOL. Zeke Art. I can confirm that she has never appeared in his streams, and he has never mentioned her. It's far more likely she summoned him via the app and then coerced him once she was in the vehicle. Death Nugs. Glowy here already. Porn Cobbler. That's how you know you're onto something. Glowy was slain for an undercover Fed who's being too obvious about it, to the point that they stick out so much that they glow. Hoping for a fresh start, she started a new post with the pic of the mysterious trash she'd found. Photo. Found in the trash near the Circle K. Think it came from GSG. Posted to r/Abaddon's Navigator by J. Key. See photo. This was discarded in the same receptacle as at least one other item GSG threw away. Do these numbers mean anything to you? Comments. No pain, no pain. That's PAYNE and then PAIN. Hey, the Fed is back. Death Nugs. This can't be a good use of your time. Porn Cobbler. How do you know it's from GSG? Zeke Art. They're heading to Washington, D.C. They're taking I-40. J. Key. You got that from the note? Or did you hear that somewhere? Zeke Art. From the note. Enter Victorville, California to Washington, D.C. into Google Maps without specifying an address. You get a trip that's 2,586 miles. She's broken it up into segments, figuring out how far she can go in a day before stopping to rest at a major city. 704 miles to Albuquerque today, 543 to OKC tomorrow, 678 to Nashville on Saturday, 660 to D.C. on Sunday. 4 days of driving, arriving on the night of Sunday, July 3rd. She's making sure they can be at the nation's capital on the 4th of July with plenty of time to spare, with a mysterious box that is, apparently, radioactive. Death Nugs. Oh, shit. Zeke, you are a dark wizard. So, is this a terrorist attack on the capital? What else would it be? No pain, no pain. Hey Fed, you should forward your whole ass paycheck to Zeke for doing your job for you. Porn cobbler. Am I the only one who thinks we should just let them do it? Seriously, what's the downside?